Hello everyone! We are talking today with Cheb Gonaz, the Internet Necromancer. This guy has spent the past 3 years making videos on necromancy and all sorts of media, including video games, movies, books, tabletop games, and more. Alright, so we are officially online. Cheb, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
I can find.
I'm sorry, I just realized I didn't have the audio output going. If you could. Oh my god.
Okay, it's fine. Should I start again now?
Yeah, sorry about that.
No problem. Hey everyone, my name's Cheb Gonaz, and I've got a small YouTube channel that's pretty much dedicated just to necromancy. I basically have the whole idea behind it is like trying to make a big sort of list of all the best necromancy games, because way back like 2 years ago or something, I was trying to find info on necromancy games, and all I could find was like just really old forum posts with like really bad information, and I kept going down lots of dead ends and stuff. So I thought, this sucks. There's bound to be other people in my situation that are trying to find good games. And like, I love necromancy in games, so I'm just going to start making videos about it. And so I've basically just been building this channel all about necromancy games, particularly with minions, because I like to be like a summoner or controller of minions. Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta say, it was honestly really fascinating for me to find your channel, because it's so incredibly niche, but at the same time, I was going through the same thing. I like playing summoners in video games, and necromancy goes right hand in hand with summoning. It's like done somewhat frequently, but just far too often it feels like you end up running into something dead or not that interesting.
Yeah, it's hard to find it done well.
So why necromancy, if you don't mind me asking?
Sure, so it's probably all the fault of Diablo 2 actually, because when I was a kid, I played Diablo 2 and I came across the Necromancer class, and I was like, wow, what's this? Because I had no idea what a Necromancer was. And I was just like, playing with the abilities, and I like right-clicked on the corpse, and suddenly I had a skeleton minion. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. And like, I really loved this because before I played Diablo 2, I'd been playing lots of RTS games, and I'd always liked having like armies of things. And so I'd never had an army of undead before. And I think Diablo 2 was like the spark, or I don't know how you say it, but I think that put me down the road of becoming some kind of necromancy lover. And yeah, since that point, I've always liked necromancy, and it was only in the last few years that I've been unable to play games that don't have minions of some kind. Like when I was a teenager and stuff, I was still able to play like other games, like play as a warrior and like enjoy it or whatever. But nowadays I pretty much can't do that. I have to have a game that lets me have some kind of army of minions, be it undead or demons, golems, whatever. As long as I have some kind of army of minions, I'm happy. But necromancy is my favorite flavor of minions.
Yeah, I can definitely agree. Like, oh boy, hold on. Oof. Sorry, my mic just peaked because I get pretty loud sometimes.
No problem.
But I can definitely agree. Like games that don't have some sort of a strategy element to it can get pretty. I don't know. It's hard to make them feel meaningful, because when you're playing a necromancer or a summoner, or you're playing some survival type game, you get to physically see your character progress. Meanwhile, if you're playing a barbarian in Diablo 2 as opposed to your necromancer, you get slightly bigger armor.
Yeah.
So, oh boy, what is your favorite game with necromancy in it then?
Oh, that's a really hard one.
Or what game do you think would you say that you've played does necromancy best in whatever way?
I probably have to do it by genre. So I think for the grand strategy kind of thing, like where you're controlling a country and you have like heaps
He's
and
gonna
heaps of
say
things
Total
to
War
manage.
Warhammer.
I think the Dominions games
Oh,
do it the
really?
best because they've just got so much going on. You've got like multiple different kinds of undead factions, and they're all really satisfying. Like there's heaps of different awesome minions you can get. Um, each faction of undead has like their own unique flavor to them, which is like different enough to be interesting. For example, you've got the Animal faction, which is kind of like undead Romans, and they've got like undead Triarii and that type of thing. But then you've also got Asphodel. That's basically like an undead forest, and you've got like stuff like undead minotaurs, like vines wrapped around them, and um, weird kind of goat necromancers and things like that. And then you've also got a ghost faction called Lemuria, and it's shadows and spirits and wraiths. So I really love that game a lot for the grand strategy kind of thing.
Oh my god.
For ARPGs, ooh, that's hard. I would have once said Diablo 2, but I think some of the new games are really cool with what they're doing. I really like Last Epoch and what it's doing because I've made a couple of videos on it, but basically you have your spell like summon skeleton or whatever, and behind that spell is like an entire talent tree for it, and you can like just tweak your skeletons to be exactly how you want it to be. Be it like you want to go for quantity over quality, you can like have many weaker skeletons. If you want better quality ones, you can reduce the number but make them individually stronger. And then on top of that, we've got like several different kinds of skeletons.
Oh, you're breaking up a bit.
Oh, sorry, what should I repeat?
Oh,
Um,
sorry, you just kind of turned into a robot for a moment there.
damn. I'll just repeat what I was saying. Hopefully, I don't go to robot again. So, yeah, last epoch, you've got the skill tree behind the skill, and you can really tailor your minions to be exactly how you want them to be, which I really like. And then, of course, you've got Grim Dawn, which I think does necromancy quite well, and it's also got quite a few awesome mods, not just for necromancy, but for summoning in general. Like I did a video on a mod for Grim Dawn that lets you become a Cacophonic summoner, and that's about the weird demons from the Grim Dawn universe.
Hey there, Rad.
Cacophon, they're kind of like blood worshippers and stuff. Half of Exile is, of course, really good. It's hard to pick a favorite. Yeah. It's really hard to pick a favorite for ARPGs, but
Yeah.
I'd say like those games for sure would be contenders. FPS. Sorry, go on.
Oh, I was about to say, I think Path of Exile, out of the games that I've played so far, would be one of my favorites, specifically for the Necromancer, because like it's essentially Diablo 2.
It's really good.
It did a lot of what Diablo 2 did, except you can't have bone walls. I'm sorry, continue.
I was going to move on to FPS. So I consider the Elder Scrolls games to be FPS. Maybe they're not FPS, but I play them in the FPS mode. So I think the Elder Scrolls, especially modded, would have to be the best FPS necromancy experience. And I'd probably put Oblivion up as my favorite of those because I really like the mods that Oblivion has for necromancy. They're very comprehensive of what they offer. And I also really like Oblivion for its sort of necromancy theme in general. Like, it has a lot of necromancy stuff going on in the game itself. Even if in the base game you can't be a necromancer or anything, there's still the entire necromancy faction and quests about them, like the Benaris Manor quest and the Dark Brotherhood quest that has you assassinate that would-be lich, like the guy who's trying to become a lich. And like all that stuff really contributed to making me even more interested in necromancy than I already was. And then once you add mods to that, you've got stuff like Mysterious Bear's Epic Necromancy, which is kind of like, it lets you craft all your own undead using bones that you gather through
Oblivion, I
grave robbing
believe.
or harvesting from corpses using a knife. You cut the corpse and you get bones from it.
Oh, I
And get
think you were playing with that mod in your world building zombies video, weren't you?
yes, I was, yeah. And
Yeah, he's talking to
this
Oblivion.
this game, this mod even has layer crafting, so you build your own necromancy layer, and it's got like structures like you need a coffin for each of your minions, and you can make this beacon thing, and it basically draws other necromancers to you, so you end up with necromancers living with you
Oh my
inside your
god,
lair,
that
and
sounds amazing.
you even get raided by the Mages Guild, which is really awesome in my opinion.
Yeah, that sounds
Um,
fantastic.
yeah. But that's not the only good mod that Oblivion has. It's also got the Necromancy and Lichdom mod, which it's got a lot of really nice custom minions. I've got two videos on it. One of the custom minions it offers is an abomination. It's basically like a spider made from zombie parts, and it's really
That
cool.
sounds horrifying.
The other thing they've got is like a heavy duty zombie. It's kind of like a normal zombie, but much bigger, and
Yeah, he is.
it's more complete. It's like got both arms and it's got a head on it and stuff like that. And the cool thing about this mod, aside of it letting you become a lich, which I'll get into in a sec, is that you can put the weapon and shield on the corpse of the thing before you animate it, and then the skeleton or zombie will use those weapons, which is really unique because not many mods allow you to do that.
Yeah, that's a. There was a mod you covered for Conan that did that as well, right?
Yeah, that was Ars Gothicus mods. He lets you put oh, yeah, that's another great FPS game for necromancy. But I'll get to that in just a sec. I'll first talk about the lichdom in the lichdom mod. So basically, the mod has a very good quest line, which allows you to become a lich, and there's different flavors of it. Like you can become a skeleton lich or a fleshy lich, or even like a ghost lich that lets you become a wraith, which is really cool.
That sounds amazing.
Um, I'll just come to Ars Gothicus mod since you brought it up. Yeah, Conan Exiles is really good for necromancy in the kind of like FPS way,
Yeah,
similar to Elder Scrolls. The issues with it are that Funcom is constantly breaking the modders' hard work. So if you're on Ars Gothicus Discord, you'll see the poor guy has constant problems with like he does all this work on his mod, and then an update comes, and Steam forces updates, and the
yeah,
mod is broken. He loses months of work. It's terrible. So I wish they'd stop doing that, or like somehow work better with the modders to stop their work getting destroyed. Because like the reason I play Conan Exiles is because of those mods.
yeah. It's specifically for the mods that you've featured.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's always a shame to see a modder's work kind of get blown out. It's a thing that happens in just about every game that I play. Because honestly, if you're playing games in the modern world without mods, you're almost not playing, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, especially with these mechanics that games have in default, like timed minions and the 1 minion limit and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's kind of silly. It's part of what bugs me in vanilla Skyrim.
Yeah,
It,
I think it's lazy balancing.
yeah, yeah. Like instead of just allowing you to only have one, maybe like make them particularly weak, or in Skyrim you don't even have to change anything about them because the AI will mess them up good enough.
That's true. The Conan Exiles has that problem too. The AI is pretty bad, and it does affect minions and what they do. Like they can have like an enemy running right in front of their face and they won't respond. But if you like hit that enemy, then all the minions will attack it. I found
Yeah.
that pretty annoying.
Man, I don't remember how long ago it was that I found this video, but I think I don't know if you were intending to, but there was one of your videos that I thought made a interesting sort of proposal, mostly by nature of it being on your channel. The video you did about Fallout 4, when I saw it through your channel, I'm for a little bit there, my brain was like, man, seeing a video about Fallout 4 on this is a little bit strange, but also the idea of it being a necromancy game slowly started coming together in my head, because you are this ancient creature from outside of this time, trawling through ruins to pull together your minions from before the world was destroyed. Like, I don't know. It was like this really good narrative got spun in my head, because specifically because you were covering Fallout 4, specifically, of course, talking about Automatron.
Yeah, that's great. By the way, I love that thing. It's so cool. I
Yeah.
do really love robots as well. It's like undead and stuff. Like it's probably undead are my favorite. Then there'd be like robots and stuff. Then demons, and like after that, various other things. But I really like robots.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a bit of a side thing, but like it was genuinely like fascinating to have that sort of roll through. So like, oh boy, I don't even know where to take the conversation necessarily. So you recently started doing your podcast thing on world building.
Yeah.
So what was the inspiration for the change from the what was it? You did like 15-minute videos and then switched over to like the what like hour long podcast style?
Yeah.
What
So
was yeah.
I can explain that. So basically, what would happen is I'd like spend a week just thinking about some world building stuff. I'd like write my notes, then I'd make a video on it, and then like I'd get comments, and in the comments were all these like super brilliant ideas from other people that I'd never like sort of thought about, and I was like, man, I wish these were in the video itself. So then I thought like there were some people on my Discord that were asking for like podcasts, I think, if I remember correctly. And then I just had the idea one day. I was just talking about it on Discord with some other people. I was like, hey, what if we just try doing a podcast? Maybe this longer format will be better for world building, because we can like kind of bounce the ideas off each other, and then we can also give people something longer to listen to. And yeah, so that's basically how it started. And I think it's a really good way to approach world building, because you get more than just my take on it. You get the take of the other guys, and they have some really good ideas. I think most of them are writers. I know that It's Ghost UK writes a lot of fiction, so he's always got great ideas and stuff. And then you've got Seventh Outpost, who's a training doctor, I believe. I hope I don't get this wrong. I believe he's in university studying to be a doctor, and he's like got this brilliant knowledge of like anatomy, and like he can really talk about the sort of the practical, realistic side of necromancy, like how it would be preserved, and like just that kind of thing, which is really cool. And you've got So High for Hentai, who's a really funny guy, and he's got a lot of good things to say
That's a
about
name.
necromancy. And of course, Jinx, who's the newest one. No, Mr. Spook is the newest one. But Jinx is a great guy. He's like a really balanced person. He's got really good ideas on necromancy, and he's also really entertaining. And Mr. Spook is another great writer of fiction. Like on the Discord, he's always putting his little snippets of various stuff from his fiction, and he's got some really cool ideas on how stuff works. So yeah, it's basically just that was the idea, just getting more people's opinions on stuff than just my own.
Okay, yeah. It honestly, so I've only sat down to watch the first of the podcast style videos. It does seem like a really good, like you said, it's a really good format for getting to the world building stuff. So how do you find these games? Because you seem to have come across quite a number of them. Do you just like is this just like all of your time is spent looking for necromancy?
Well, I can tell you. So, firstly, there's a big list of games that I've personally played that I really like and I want to tell people about. This is both games and mods. I still haven't gone through all of these. Like, there's more stuff that I've played than I've done videos on. And then, in addition to this, I have like a huge backlog of things that I've picked up, like usually on sale, like 90% off. Just things that might have necromancy, like maybe I read on some ancient forum post that someone said, hey, this is necromancy. And I'm like, okay, it costs $2, I'll just add it to my list. I've got like heaps of games like that. And it's really a big challenge to get to these because a lot of them are old games. And they just don't run so well and they're kind of unintuitive. Like, I really wanted to cover a game. I'll just quickly look up what the name of it was because I want to get it right. Basically, what happened is that it was cool, but it has that really old kind of interface, and I just couldn't get past the interface on it. So I still haven't done a video on it, despite wanting to. I believe it's Disciples 2. Yeah, Disciples 2. It's I believe it's from the 90s or early 2000s, and it's got some pretty cool necromancy in it, but it's got an old style of interface. It kind of feels like I'm trying to write with my left hand or something, and it just puts me off investigating it properly. But yeah, so I've got like, just pretty much a lifetime of like necromancy interest and like all the little things that I've investigated over the years, in addition to a big list of stuff that I haven't tried that I've got to go through as well. And then they keep adding new stuff. Like, new stuff will come out and I want to cover that, so I do that. Yeah, I'll probably never run out of content.
That's awesome, man. I'll tell you. I guess I'm looking for things that tend to be far too specific because it is so insanely difficult for me personally to find the new games that I'm interested in. There's of course the old top 10 list for Magic in video games, which, I mean, if you were trying to go out and find new necromancy games, I imagine that would be fairly difficult.
Yeah.
But trying to find specifically games that let you tell unique, interesting stories with magic in them is difficult. So it's neat to see that what you're working with. Do you know what you like? Yeah. Sorry. It's I apologize. My brain completely voided there. I completely lost my train of thought.
No worries. Yeah, I thought in the beginning that I'd run out of stuff to cover, but really the problem has been the reverse. Like, I've got a huge wealth of stuff to cover, and covering it takes like a fair bit of energy and effort, especially with stuff that I don't necessarily feel like playing. Then it starts to become like a chore rather than a hobby. So I procrastinate on those things. So there's a lot of things that I put off because I keep, I want to, when I come home from work or whatever, I want to have fun. So I'm not inclined to go and find something from my big backlog that maybe I don't enjoy so much to do a video on. So sometimes I just never get around to covering these things.
Okay, that's an interesting one. So are there any of the videos that you've made that were on games you didn't particularly enjoy?
I believe so, yes. Let me just look quickly for my videos. I'll know them when I see them. I'll just go back to the very beginning. So, the first one I would say that I didn't really enjoy, that I covered because I just wanted to be comprehensive, would be Warlords 2 Battlecry. And again, it's not because it's a bad game. It's more the case of that old style of like game with the interface and things just feeling unintuitive. I just couldn't really get into it properly. But I know a lot of people love that game, so I wanted to have a video on it just so people can find it if that will appeal to them. After that, quite a few Skyrim mods, like for example, Skyrim Corpse Preparation True Necromancy. I knew I didn't like that mod because I played it before, but in a lot of ways it's a very cool mod because of how close to the lore it is, but then also frustratingly how sort of not close to the lore it is with the addition of like things to make it really expensive and hard to make minions that are actually quite bad. If you're interested in the details on that, you can watch my video on it. All the Morrowind mods, so I'll just go into Morrowind mods very briefly because I get a lot of people asking me like, why don't you go and cover Morrowind more? And I'll tell you the reason. It's because the Morrowind mods like demand far too much of my time. A lot of them are very involved in what you have to do. Like there's this one that people wanted me to cover called Dopey Necromancy. I spent about a month trying to get it to work. To give you the idea, you first had to get like level 50 conjuration or something and level 50 this and that to like even begin with it. Then you had to spend your time like running around the whole continent finding multiple copies of these obscure necromancy books that are only available in like dungeons and stuff, and maybe you find them, maybe you don't, maybe they spawn, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
And you read them and you get like a note and it gives you like a clue. And like once you found these books, all of them, I actually spawned them in using the console because I didn't have the patience to, spend 20 or more hours like dungeon delving for this stuff. So you get all these notes and then you have like a very obscure kind of clue about how you might do the necromancy ritual. Something about the moon and at a certain time, and there was no help I could find on the forum, like not the forum, but you know how like on the Nexus there's like comments. I couldn't find any help in there. So I just got really like fed up and frustrated trying to get this mod to work, and a lot of Morrowind mods are like that. And that's why when I did that video on Morrowind mods, I covered the 3 that I found sort of easy enough to cover within like a reasonable time frame. I don't remember if it was 3 or less than that. Then I put up a big list of all the ones that I'd found that people maybe want to investigate on their own that I don't want to investigate, at least in this present point in time, because it's just far too time intensive. So there's that one. Then we come to Torchlight 2. So I don't much like Torchlight just from the sort of aesthetics. And like it also, I find the Torchlight classes really generic. So it's also lacking that kind of darkness that I really appreciate in an ARPG. Like Path of Exile, Grim Dawn, Diablo. These games have like a kind of a darkness to them, whereas Torchlight is very cartoony. So I didn't really want to cover Torchlight, but there was a good necromancy mod for it. So I did a video on that and just had to kind of push myself through it. What else? Checking. Titan Quest. I don't like Titan Quest. For anyone who doesn't know, it's a ARPG from the same people who made Grim Dawn, but they made it like maybe a decade ago. It had a necromancy mod that I wanted to investigate, but I was just pushing myself through it. What else?
So it sounds like there's actually quite a few. Well, okay, it sounds like there's a few, at least, that you didn't particularly enjoy. But
Yeah,
it sounds like your want to be comprehensive in covering necromancy led you to it, which is really, really good. That's a really admirable quality.
yeah. I try to do my best at it because the other problem I have is when I'm covering stuff I'm not interested in, sometimes that can leak into my video and like maybe I don't give stuff the total fair shake of the stick that it deserves, but I try to be careful about that and not like, allow I try to be objective about things where I can.
See, it sounds like you're much better about it than I am. Like I've had there are 29 videos on I think it's 29 videos on my YouTube that I did as a series on RimWorld of Magic. And since then, people have been like, hey, can you cover this other RimWorld mod? And I'm like, no, leave me alone. I don't like that mod. Because
Yeah.
there's just, it's just bad. But I don't like being that negative about things. And I know very well how when I start getting annoyed with something, I'm going to be very harsh on it. So I'm just like, hey, listen, you'll have to find someone else to cover it.
Yeah.
Every 2 or 3 days, I'll get another comment that's like, hey, can you check out the classes from Cures class add-ons? I'm like, no, leave me alone.
Yeah, that's like me and the Morrowind mods. I still get comments of people asking me to cover this and that Morrowind mod, and I look at it and I know it's one that's going to take me like 2 months to even get the idea of how to make it work. I'm just like, oh no, sorry. I try to explain as politely and best I can, like the issue of why I don't cover many Morrowind mods anymore. It's for that reason. It's just, do you want a video every 2 months, or would you like it more regularly than that? So that kind of thing.
Yeah, I completely empathize there. I'm currently working on some videos for spell research for Skyrim. Have you ever tried that mod?
Oh, let me think. Spell research. No, but it does ring a bell. Like, I think I've been told about it, but I haven't looked at it.
So this mod goes against the standard spell learning system where you eat a book and know a spell. Instead, you study natural plants, you find ancient texts and artifacts and stuff, and you break them down and you study those things in order to learn spells. I'm working on a handful of videos for that, and let me tell you, it actually suffers through one of the problems you were talking about with the Morrowind mods, where like it's not too obscure, it's just very slow if you play on the standard settings. Now,
Yeah.
it happens that a couple of years back, I tried making a Let's Play series using this mod. Um, and around that time, I mentioned to the mod author that, hey, your mod's really bad for anybody trying to do a Let's Play series or any sort of long-running YouTube thing with magic, specifically using your mod. And they're like, okay, I'll add in some sliders or something to so that you can control the experience a bit better. And so this time through, now that I'm live streaming it and making a series out of it, it's significantly easier. But you play on the standard settings, and like, what was it? I spent a 6 hour stream, collecting up plants, breaking them down. Other stuff happened at the same time, but it was 6 hours of running around the countryside collecting plants, break them down in the alembic, study them, and then I go to make a spell, and even making a novice level spell using it was completely failed. And I'm like, after 6 hours, this is ridiculous.
Yeah. You waste so much time, like 6 hours. That's 1.5 days after work, pretty much. You come home from work, you have a 4 hour window where you can do something. And, if a mod is consuming all that time with like obscure stuff and you're going around in circles, then come Saturday you won't have anything to make a video on.
Yeah. Yeah, and oh god, getting videos made and put out regularly is so insanely important when you're doing the YouTube thing. What
Yeah.
is your schedule like?
Well,
I keep sort of clicking around instead of focusing. I'm really bad at
yeah.
focusing. So it looks like you do what, like one or two videos a month, or
Yeah, I try, like, in ideal situations, and I've been able to do this, like, on and off. I can churn out a video, like, every Saturday or every Sunday, like, about weekly. But I haven't been able to, like, consistently do this. And there's a lot of reasons for that. The first one is, like, even if I really want to, sometimes investigating a game properly just takes a lot of time. Like, it might take a month.
mm-hmm.
So if the game I'm doing a video on requires a month for me to properly explore it, then I can't really maintain that, weekly thing anymore. But for other things, it's really quick. Like some mods or some games are quite simple, and I can just, quite easily do everything I need to do in a week. But then, like, there's of course like real life that happens. Um, I recently had to move house, and there were like a fair few other things going on in my life. Like I got a new job and stuff like that, and it really like making videos just wasn't on the table for a long time. Like I think at least 2 months, I wasn't really able to even think about making a video. I've just like gotten back into it with that podcast I just made, so that's good. Things should be back on schedule now. So ideally once a week, but more realistically, maybe like once a month or twice a month, something like that.
Okay, so specifically on the video making side, because I'm curious if this is a thing for you as well. Do you think doing the podcast is actually easier or harder than
Oh,
making the sort of more tailored videos or whatever?
the podcast is so much easier because I'll just let you know what I do when I'm doing a video for like a game or a mod. So basically, I first play the mod like without thinking about making a video on it. Like I just want to explore everything, and then when I'm done, I kind of like have some opinions like, is this mod good or is this game good? Like, do I like it or whatever? And then I play it again and I start to like note everything down. Like I'll make a list of abilities and like maybe describe how they work and like how difficult it is to get them, and like then I'll start thinking about, are the minions any good? Like how strong are they? So I like have this like document where I list all these things. And then I need to make footage of everything. So I have to, you know, record the right moments of gameplay where stuff is happening. And like sometimes there's technical issues, like maybe the audio doesn't record properly for reasons unknown, so I have to trash content and like re-record. So basically, the main issue is the investigation, then the getting of the footage, then sort of putting all this stuff together, and then I have to also record myself talking about it. And sometimes, I have a bad day, like maybe my mouth is too dry and that sound gets picked up by the mic, and I really hate that. So it's
Oh,
happened
you
to
mean
me that,
that the awful mouth clicking noise, right?
yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
oh my god, it's terrible.
I have trashed like entire recordings just due to that alone. So like, I've spent a Saturday afternoon recording stuff, and then like I listen back on it and I don't like it because it's got, some kind of background sound in it, like somebody typing or that mouth clicking. I just think this is no good. I trash it. I do everything again. It's like that kind of thing can really make making a simple video, like a 5 or 15-minute video, quite complicated. But with the podcast, it's pretty much you just record it. Somehow mouth clicking sounds don't seem to be a problem. Maybe Discord filters them out. I don't know. So I basically just spend one afternoon recording it. Then I just pretty much have to do some compression on the audio so that everything is evened out, so that like nobody is louder than anyone else or that type of thing. And yeah, so it's much easier to do the podcast than it is to do the standard kind of video.
Yeah, man. you mentioned, like, for some reason when you're in voice chat, it's just you never get the mouth clicking. I don't get it either, because let me tell you, man, when I'm sitting there and I'm listening through Audacity and I'm working on one of these, I don't even know what to call the newest style of video I'm working on, where it's just me chatting about a concept or something, and I hear it, but then I'm working on right now, for instance, editing down a discussion we did a couple weeks back on just general magic in video games. I'm listening back through that and I'm not hearing it from anyone. And I'm like,
Yeah.
how? Why? What?
Yeah, I think Discord must somehow filter it out.
Yeah.
Because I know for a fact that I've gone on podcasts with a pretty dry mouth, like I haven't been drinking tea or whatever. And then I should have mouth clicking, but it's not there. So it's interesting. You know what you can do is, it sounds kind of stupid, but you can drink lemon juice and it gets rid of the clicking for a bit.
Oh, that's really good suggestion. Thanks for that one.
Yeah. Apparently an apple works too, but I haven't tried that. Something with a bit of acidity apparently helps. So like what I do is I have like maybe a glass of water. I just like dump some lemon juice in there, because you can't drink pure lemon juice, but I just like take a swig of that, swish it around. The clicking is gone for like a few minutes, then it's back. Repeat. It's kind of annoying.
Hey, that is a good trick, though. That is,
Yeah.
frankly, awesome. So, I'm seeing, like, what is it? One video? Two videos on books. Are you planning on moving more in the direction of covering books, or was that just, like, sort of a novelty thing? You're like, might as well.
I love books. Whenever I don't feel like playing games, I can usually read and have a great time. So the issue is not that I don't want to cover books, it's just the difficulty in finding actual books that have the necromancy that I like in them. It's a real challenge, especially finding books with necromancy protagonists, because usually what happens in books is that the necromancy will be like some small thing on the side. You don't really get to explore it too well. But I have found some really good books that have a lot of necromancy in them, and these are the ones that I've done videos on. I'd love to find more. If anyone knows, just let me know. The best I've found are the Warhammer books, Forgotten Realms books, and then some really old books like Zofik, which is basically a huge collection of short stories. And every short story heavily features necromancy because Clark Ashton Smith, the author of these short stories, apparently really loved necromancy. And he has like a huge collection of short stories, and they're all public domain. You can just find, a PDF online,
That's
download
really cool.
it, and have a great read if you want to.
That sounds awesome. I was actually just about to ask, I was about to ask if you found any books with Necromancer as a protagonist, and then what's your favorite Necromancer as protagonist? I guess character more than book.
Oh, I'd have to say, Nagash from Warhammer, because can you call him a protagonist? Like the books
Nagash.
follow. Yeah.
Wait, I was about to say, isn't that? I'm trying to remember who Nagash is.
He's basically like the granddaddy of necromancy in the Warhammer setting. He's kind of like he comes from a race of people that are kind of Egyptian themed.
I was going to say he's the Tomb King.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, but anyway, I don't know if you could call him a protagonist because he's like thoroughly evil, but the books do follow him. Like he's the focus of the books. So that's a really great read, especially if you like evil necromancers. There's another one. It's called it's 3 books and it's from the Forgotten Realms. It's called Unclean, Undead, and Unholy. And basically It's not completely about necromancy and necromancers, but it heavily features Saztam, who is like the Zolkir of Thay for necromancy in the Forgotten Realms setting. So like it's just soaked in necromancy. There's pretty much I wouldn't say like it's 100% necromancy, but it's probably about 90% necromancy. So that's really good. Aside of that, you've got Zofik, which is very mixed. It's got stories from the point of view of necromancers. It's got stories from the point of view of people interacting with necromancers. It's quite mixed. So if you want like sort of a big mix of things, that's a great option. Then you've got the Sabriel books. They're kind of like teenage books, and they follow good necromancers, but there isn't really that much in the way of minions. So I didn't really enjoy them that much, but they're fun to read all the same if you're like starving for necromancy books. I'm trying to think if I've missed something.
So, have you seen any books that take like a particularly interesting or unique approach to necromancers? Just something that really stands out among the rest of them in like what particular way? Because I don't even know if I can like quite quantify what I'm asking there.
I think I get what you mean. So basically, the modern perception of the necromancer, we know him very well, and he's what we typically see, like the D&D kind of necromancer, the Warhammer kind of necromancer. It's like that type of thing, you know. It's all kind of similar, and we really love that, of course. But if you want to go back to a time before that was kind of established as a necromancer, then I think to bring up Zofik yet again, but Zofik is a great option because it was written in either the 1920s or the 1930s, and there wasn't even that perception of like the classic modern necromancer yet. So Clark Ashton Smith has some books, or rather short stories, with that kind of necromancer in it. But he's also got a whole heap of other short stories with all kinds of different necromancers in them from a completely different point of view, because it's from a time before that was established. And Clark was like, I guess he had a great imagination, and he was really thinking outside the box with a lot of what he wrote. So if you want to have like a very different kind of portrayal of necromancy, I think he's a great option. Aside of that, it's pretty much slim pickings, to be honest.
So, I know you were talking about, you enjoy like the minions and so on. So there is a real life mythology practice that I learned about a couple of years back that I think you might be interested in. If you're interested in like a really unique look at what could be called necromancy, have you ever heard of I don't know if it's a religious practice or like a mythology practice called Bokor?
I don't think I've heard of that.
So this is Jesus, I'm gonna say it's Haitian and I'm probably wrong, but it's a practice I learned about years ago, and calling it a practice isn't necessarily true. I just can't remember the name of the actual religion. But the idea is similar to what people think of as voodoo, except the Bokor is both this like justice keeper type and it's a necromancer who like seals away people's soul from themselves while they're alive. It like if you want to find a very unique look at manipulation of the soul, I think taking a look at Bokors, and any stories that sort of follow them could be particularly interesting. You're not going to get the people raising armies of the dead or anything like that, but it's like a wholly different approach to what a necromancer is.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. For a lot of history, necromancer was simply someone who just spoke with spirits.
Hey there, Death of Certainty. How you doing?
Like,
yeah,
in the Bible or whatever.
Yeah, I actually didn't know that. I didn't know this for a while. I found this out a couple of years back, but necromancy, the oldest sort of recording we have of necromancy was originally just called divination.
Yeah.
It's the casting of bones to commune with the spirits or answer fateful questions, whatever. And I thought that was really interesting, reading up on that.
Yeah. The whole Minimancer Necromancer is quite a modern concept, it would seem.
Yeah, let's see here. So, okay, you go over necromancy a lot. Let's see. We've talked about favorite game. Well, we've talked about best games. Is there a favorite, or would that just go along with what you were saying is the best games for necromancy?
Oh, let me think. So, picking a favorite is difficult because you have like various moods for things. Like, I can definitely tell you favorites for like the various moods that I have. Like, hands down, if I feel like playing an Elder Scrolls game and I'm not like sick of it because I've already played it too much, I'll definitely go straight to Oblivion. That would be my favorite for that type of game. For like strategy and that type of thing, I cycle between Dominions and what else? Yeah, pretty much Dominions is the main go-to for me. There's a lot of other good ones like Age of Wonders, which is really fantastic, but it lacks the depth that the other game has, and because of that, it's got better graphics and stuff. But if you're seeking simply gameplay and complexity, Dominions has it hands down. I'm trying to think what other genres there are that has necromancy. I'm pulling blanks. Survival, I guess we can go into that as a genre. So I really love Conan Exiles, except for the fact that Funcom keeps breaking all the mods. So I'm having a break from that for now. Minecraft would be really good if it had some decent necromancy mods, and I'm doing my best to find them. But I keep pulling up things that just are not satisfying enough for me. Like, yeah, it's a challenge, and also there's the whole versioning thing with Minecraft. Like,
oh yeah, trying to figure out what edition you're playing, what version on that edition.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a whole universe of mods that I really need to investigate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry to sort of repeat what I've already said there.
Oh no, not at all. Like, you know, I pretty much just asked a question which has kind of already been asked, but I figure there might be a slightly different answer. Man,
is there something you're trying to like drill down to? Maybe if you tell me. Not
really. I'm kind of running through like, okay, what are more questions? Because, you know, I don't prepare very well for these things.
No worries.
I see you've covered Total War Warhammer a couple of times.
Sorry. Sorry. Total War Warhammer is one of the best games ever. How can I forget that?
Yeah, I was actually
up at the top. Holy shit.
I was like, wow, I'm actually surprised to not hear him mention Total War Warhammer 2 specifically because, man, I've been thinking about trying to do a thing specifically with Warhammer 2, where you play as vampire counts or Coast or whoever, and you play through the whole game, never recruiting from buildings, because the vampire counts, I think, have the coolest like narrative recruitment in the entire game.
Yeah. I'm so annoyed that I forgot to bring up that game earlier because, yeah, I put it above Dominions. It's the best you can get for grand strategy. It's got everything. And it's got so many different flavors of undead. You've got the vampire counts, you've got the vampire coast, which is the pirates and all that. And you've got the Tomb Kings. Is there something else I'm forgetting? It's got so much.
Oh lordy, I don't know, man. And the okay, so Total War Warhammer 2 and the first game and probably the third game when it comes out
Yeah.
this month, next month, I can't remember when it actually comes out. Like they have so many magic systems in them that tell such interesting stories, or as I try to focus, it allows you to tell such interesting stories. Like, outside of the necromancy, I think it might be the only instance of geomancy that's actually anything like how geomancy is portrayed in fiction, like elsewhere. You know what I'm talking about with geomancy, right?
I'm not sure I do.
So geomancy, I'm going to say in real life, this is just other fiction, and those sort of suspicion beliefs, is the thing with the ley lines and how supposedly if you track common roads and lanes and specific trajectories, you'll find these centers of power and all that. The lizard folk have ley lines in their mechanics. They don't quite work the same way, but if you look at it sideways, you can actually backtrack the logic the same way people have in real life. So like there's people who would talk about how what is it, that stone circle in wherever it's at, Stonehenge. People will say that sits on the intersection of two ley lines and it's a place of power for whatever. Like, it's really wacky, but at the same time, the fact that this is potentially the only game that does geomancy like that is really interesting.
Yeah.
Also, the fact that it has necromancy and diplomacy in it is really good. I don't know why more games don't have both.
Yeah, for sure. Just coming back to the favorites thing again, because I just remembered something. I completely forgot about one of my favorite genres. I got a really bad problem where I forget my favorite things, like Total War Warhammer, for example. But,
don't worry, I do the same thing.
Yeah, so one of the best genres for necromancy is roguelike, and there's a plethora of great roguelike games that have great necromancy in them. And, oh my god, where to begin? So my overall favorite right now would definitely be Soul Ash. I don't know if you know about it, but I've got a video on it, and it's basically a game about you're this ancient god that was like betrayed by your children and like cast away into the abyss or something, and you come back, and the only knowledge of you among like the humans is like ancient scary legends. And they kind of know who you are because like when they meet you they start freaking out and stuff, but basically with every person or creature you kill, you take a bit of them and you add it back to yourself, because basically what happened is that you were carved up, and every living thing in the world has like a piece of you. So whenever you kill someone, you're like getting a piece of yourself back, and you reclaim memories. You get your powers back, that kind of thing. So you're playing this like evil guy, and one of the classes you can choose is Necromancy, and it allows you to have an unlimited number of zombies, like really unlimited, like as many as your computer can handle. If you have the corpses, you can make the zombies, and the only thing is that the zombies don't scale. So they start out like really strong, but then towards the end of the game, they're pretty much just cannon fodder. They're still useful though, because you can have just so many of them. Then you've got like slightly stronger skeletons, which are also fixed. I believe they stay, I don't know exactly what level or anything, but the same thing happens to them. They start out like really great, then they get like worse later on because they don't scale, but they're still very useful.
Okay.
So there's that game, yeah. And there's, of course, Dwarf Fortress, which is really fantastic with how it does it. If you want, I can tell you.
I've actually never played Dwarf Fortress, so yeah.
Okay, so basically in Dwarf Fortress is like a crazy game because there's like layers upon layers of complexity. And that is also true for the Necromancy in Dwarf Fortress. So basically, you can reanimate anything that was once living. So you might kill some guy, right? You have the corpse. You reanimate that corpse. Then it kills things for you. Maybe it loses an arm. Well, the arm is lying on the ground. You can reanimate that. And if the arm gets severed and it's just a hand and like an arm, we can reanimate both those things. And so you can just keep reanimating all these stupid things, and you can have like a horde of like broken bodies and like dismembered cats and like just all these silly things following you. But it's just really cool for that reason, in my opinion.
That's
and it's
amazing.
Yeah, it's really good. Soul Ash and Dwarf Fortress are similar in the way that you can just keep reanimating things. There's no real limit. But Dwarf Fortress makes it really interesting with the whole fact that you can reanimate like a cat's tail, and it won't do much damage, but hey, it can soak one hit up for you.
And I know that Dwarf Fortress has the downside of not really having graphics, but
yeah,
you just get to imagine there's a cat's tail wriggling after you. That is like both of these games sound amazing.
Yeah. I can tell you even more. So another great game, and I think it's also the best game for people that haven't played a roguelike before because it's welcoming, but at the same time it's still very complex and great. So it's good for beginners and like advanced roguelike players. It's called Tales of Marshall. It has a great Necromancer in it. I have a video on the Necromancer in it because they recently overhauled it and how it works. And it's really good with how it works now. I actually made a mod for it a few years back because I personally wasn't satisfied with how the Necromancy works, so I just made my own mod to satisfy myself. It was pretty good, but of course, it's not compatible with the modern Tales of Marjal anymore. And and the new one they have now is very satisfying, so there's no real need for my mod.
Well, I mean, at least when they broke your mod, they fixed the class.
Yeah, sure. That's true. It's really my fault because I neglected it for like 4 years or longer. I don't even know how old it is. It might be 6 years. I'm not sure. It's old.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things that inevitably is going to happen with any mod is you're going to it's gonna break one day, just because you can't really expect a mod author to stick to a mod forever. I'm amazed that the Skyrim mods have stayed alive as long as they have. Because
Skyrim. Yes. The good thing about Bethesda games is that they seem to come out and then they don't really get updates. Maybe just a bug fix or two, but they're in that like just steady state. So I think it's great for modding. Like unlike Conan Exiles, where it's early access, they're constantly changing things, breaking things. It's just a nightmare for modders. But I think the Elder Scrolls game are a pretty stable base, right? I'm not
Yeah,
familiar with like, yeah,
from what I understand, they are fairly. If I would say that they're like incredibly stable. They don't. Well, okay, not stable in the sense of like you can play the game for hours because inevitably you will experience a crash, but
yeah,
stable in that they don't change much after the game comes out, unlike something like Paradox Interactive where week by week you just never know which games are going to have how many mods break.
yeah. It's awful. And Steam does us no favors with that because it forces you to always have the latest version. But like, if you get the game on GOG, you can specifically choose what version you want. But then if you get the game on GOG, you don't have access to the Steam servers for multiplayer, and you don't have the Steam Workshop. So it's like, you got to like choose what you want. Do you want like complete control, no DRM, or do you want the DRM with these extra nice things that you get, like the multiplayer server support and the workshop?
Yeah, getting access to the workshop is a really important one for me, although I guess for like Elder Scrolls games you've always got the Nexus.
Yeah, that's true. I wish Steam would just let you like fix the version, like to say, okay, Steam, please, I want to play with these mods that work with this version. Can you please stop updating the game?
Well,
It's just
you can actually in your options you can tell it to not update.
really. I tried it; it didn't work for me, but maybe I did it wrong.
You know what might have happened is a Steam update might have happened, which then potentially reset your choice for that.
Oh yeah,
Because
could be.
I imagine that being a thing that happens semi-frequently.
Yeah,
Ooh, another okay, a game. I don't know. I don't know if you've already checked it out, but one you might be interested in. Have you ever looked at Cultist Simulator?
I have heard of it. I haven't considered it for a video because I don't think it's got the gameplay I'm looking for, but I may be completely wrong on that. Feel free to correct me
Yeah,
if I'm wrong.
it is a very esoteric narrative style game. It doesn't have a whole lot in the way of graphic user interface. It mostly looks like cards on a table. Um, but you end up contacting chthonic elder beings. You end up summoning demons and the undead to try to fight and to try to push off investigators as you're doggedly pursuing immortality. Like I'm not certain looking at the kinds of games you've played if you'd be interested though. Yeah, I saw you recently, I say recently, this was 3 months ago, covered Shadow Behind the Throne,
Oh yeah,
which I'm looking at that, like, that looks amazing.
I love that game. It's really good.
I see you covered Sea Salt. Was that any good?
It was, if you're looking for like the whole Dagon thing, like Lovecraft, Cthulhu, that type of thing, is pretty good. It's not exactly the kind of game that I personally want to play. Like, I probably just played it once the video, and I'll probably never play it again. But that one time I played it, it was fun. And I think I said good things about it because the minions are strong and that type of thing. But yeah, it's not exactly the kind of game that I'm looking for because my favorite kind of games are kind of like you. I like to tell my own story. I don't like to be on rails of things, and so I keep finding myself coming back to like Skyrim and games like that where I can just do whatever I want.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, games like Sea Salt, you're in control of like essentially just a swarm, right?
Yeah,
Like you've got your center body, but mostly you're a swarm, and that sort of thing's like oh boy, Eratus. ugh. I keep trying to be interested in Eratus. Um,
Yeah,
oof.
I
It did one clever thing, and that is how you get control of the Dampier.
yeah. I played the Erasmus demo and I knew, hey, this game isn't for me, so I'm not going to get it. I'm not going to do a video on it because I'm probably not going to say anything good about it. And it's not a bad game, I think. Like it's not my kind of game. So like I know people play it and they love it, and that's great. But there's games that are out there and they're just not for me. And I think Erasmus is one of them.
Yeah. Like, oh man, I wanted to do a video on Eratus around the time of the demo because the Dampier is like one of the hero characters, but if you kill all of the people around them and then cause them to break, that's how you unlock them as a minion. And I'm like, that's really cool. And then the game released and I'm like, why doesn't it feel as good anymore? I don't, because I was like vaguely interested in it at first, and then the Dampier thing happened, and I'm like, okay, so this game's gonna have all sorts of unique approaches to getting minions. This will be really cool. And then I don't know, something in the game feel of it just shifted ever so slightly.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I played the demo. I was initially quite excited for Ratus. I just played the demo and I was like, this isn't grabbing me. This kind of combat, this style of thing. Yeah, not for me, unfortunately. My loss, I wish I could enjoy every game, then I'd have a lot more fun. But oh
Right.
well. Yeah,
I don't know, man. Maybe it's not worth enjoying every game because then you'd be tempted to buy every game.
that's true. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I'm seeing a 2-month-old video with a title that I'm interested in. I haven't gotten to watch this one, but it's when would necromancy be ethical?
Oh
Like
yeah.
I've seen in D&D YouTube a lot of people or even in some of the Elder Scrolls side of YouTube, like when people talk about necromancy, they always end up falling back to necromancy will inevitably be evil. So where do you stand on that?
So the conclusion we came to on the podcast was pretty much that the only way to be ethical with necromancy in a proper way is to use animals because we already slaughter them for food. The bones and stuff are there. You can just as long as you're not a vegan, you can ethically use animal remains for necromancy and it's no problem. The issue with humans is that you always run into this problem where there'll be some kind of market for flesh. It's kind of like the whole problem with organs, right? In the real world, like you have people that get killed for their organs because as soon as there's a demand for corpses, it creates the incentive to kill people, and that's basically the root of the problem, or at least that's what I remember from what we discussed. So due to this sort of supply to demand capitalism on corpses, it basically makes this demand for people to be killed that's just you can't get around the immorality of that, and that really makes it really difficult to be an ethical necromancer. But if you can somehow use animals, then I think you're totally fine.
All right, that's really good. Like all of the discussions I end up hearing are like it corrupts your soul, and like that's not a very satisfying answer personally.
No, it's not. I also dislike that type of thing because the other thing we came to, or at least my opinion on it, some of the others disagreed, but I think as long as you can get consent, then it should be completely okay. So if you're a necromancer and you somehow reach out to the spirit and you say, hey, I need help, can I use your remains? And they say yes, well then you basically got like a contract between you and the spirit that owns that stuff, and or at least should own it. The other issue we came to with the morality of necromancy is that people claim ownership over a corpse. For example, it's kind of like grave robbing in a way, because someone dies and now their corpse and belongings, all that stuff, are kind of like the property of their family. So when you're a necromancer and you go and you take someone's corpse and you raise it, the family can object to that because you're kind of like using something that in a weird way belongs to them. But I still think that if you can get consent from the spirit that, you know, actually owns that corpse, then that should like override the family's kind of wishes, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, I like the idea of if you were to have a necromancer in society having the equivalent of organ donor cards, except, you know,
Yeah.
it's all of the organs.
Yeah, the issue is that corruption, because as soon as you have some kind of system that permits the use of like corpses, they would say, okay, the society says you can have all the criminals, you can have their corpses, but you can't touch the citizens. What happens is that corruption will slowly start to seep in. There'll be like people pushing for laws to expand who a criminal is because they want more corpses. And so then it starts becoming unethical again, because, you know, people that shouldn't be deemed criminals are now being deemed criminals because there's a demand for bodies. And so then, you know, it's just a quagmire.
Yeah, absolutely. And oh god, I love that you've put so much thought into that, because yeah, well, first off, I'm a huge fan of overthinking things. I do it constantly.
Yeah.
But you know, it's really neat to think through that sort of thing. I personally am I might be more pro necromancy on that one than you are. But similar reservations, you know, it's like, well, you might end up with like corpse harvesting or whatever, murdering people just so that you can get at their corpse. Although I like the idea of the organ donor thing, because the organ donor equivalent, because you do have this setup system there. Oh, that's why that's there. Okay. Oh god.
Yeah. You know, organ donorship in real life and necromancy corpse acquisition in a fantasy setting, they're almost like completely equivalent, because in both situations, someone's corpse is getting used, right? So
Yeah.
if you just change the intended use, like on one side you've got necromantic use, on the other side you've got medical use. You can just kind of like swap those things out, and the result is kind of the same. So you can look to what's happened in the real world with, like, you know, doctors that have deliberately killed car crash victims instead of saving them because of the monetary value of their organs. That type of thing is a kind of corruption, because they're doing something they shouldn't be doing due to the financial incentive or whatever to get their hands on the corpse. The same thing will happen in a fantasy setting with necromancers.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine that that sort of thing would definitely get a perverse incentivization cropping up around it.
Yeah, 100%.
Let's see.
And then the other take on that podcast from Seventh actually was that because of how unclean, and I hope I don't butcher what his message was. If you're really interested, like, viewers, you should watch that podcast and hear it from Seventh himself. But he was basically saying that due to the unclean nature of undead, whenever you're like, you know, having these things sort of wandering around, you're kind of like compromising the health of society, and for that reason, it's kind of immoral.
Yeah, that's so. like all day yesterday after we chatted. I think it was yesterday. I was a part of me wanted to open with a joke about how you had been busy as a necromancer because of the recent pandemic, and then I'm like, that's a bit insensitive. But one part of the joke was also going to lead into like how actually it's really bad for a necromancer to be operating in a time where there's a lot of disease rolling around, because it's not like the disease goes away.
Yeah, that's right.
You've got to make sure to keep your corpses clean.
Yeah, and it's really difficult to be like hygienic about corpses.
I now want to see that like as a cartoon or short film or just a one-off sketch comedy, like the like necromancer bathhouses or whatever. Ugh.
Yeah, I think mummification is the best way, or like spirits. Spirits should be totally clean, right?
You would hope, and it really depends on like whether ectoplasm's involved. Because you get ectoplasm involved, and you're just like, well, I've got no clue what that's gonna do for people's health.
Yeah, but someone will be like putting it in a tonic and claiming it'll heal like erectile dysfunction or something, showing it off as like Chinese medicine.
Oh my god, that's fantastic. Oh god.
Sorry, I hope that wasn't appropriate for your...
No,
stream.
not at all. That is great.
That's good.
Oh my lord. I just imagine people selling off from ghosts specialty ectoplasm, like, oh, this is ectoplasm from I don't know, Ron Jeremy, you know, a well-known male porn star. He's got the virility of a stallion.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh no. Just imagining all the secondary markets that would pop up around necromancy now. It'd be great and ridiculous.
You know something really weird that I learned about while researching for the Mummies podcast?
What's that?
There's a kind of mummy called the Mellified Man, and this is pretty gross, right? It's a cross-culture thing, so like it was done in China, Middle East, Europe as well, I think. Like all sort of cultures had this thing. It's basically like a person decides to become a mummy made of honey. And what they do is they start consuming nothing but honey. And of course, they eventually die from this. And then when they die, they're so infused with honey that they're almost like kind of like a honey thing. And then they get dumped in like a casket, and even more honey is poured on them. And they're kind of like kept in this like vat of honey. And they become mummified in honey. And then what will happen is that people will consume pieces of mummified flesh from this mellified man, and it has like, you know, miraculous medicinal properties. It'll cure this and that, and that's something really interesting and disgusting that I learned while looking up all the stuff that Mummy's podcast. So like, if that's happening in real life, imagine what's happening in the fantasy world of necromancy.
That's disgusting and amazing. Holy shit, dude.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that's fantastic. Oh man.
Wikipedia link, 1 second.
I'm
It's really
sorry.
interesting. Here you go. I'll just send it to you. There. The Mellified Man.
That is wait, and you said this has happened multiple times?
Yeah, it was something that, you know, the ancient people did just in general. Kind of like how I'm pretty sure all cultures used to drill holes in people's head to cure headaches or whatever. They all kind of did this too. Just one of those weird things that people did before we had proper medicine.
Yeah. I mean wow, this is Fascinating. The drilling holes in a person's head I can kind of get because that's where your headache goes. But
Yeah.
like, human as candy.
Yeah. There's another really interesting kind of mummy, and it's a Japanese one. It's to do with Buddhism. Basically, a monk will
Oh
decide
my
that they want to become this special kind of mummy. It's like a sacred thing. And basically, they start eating things. They enter like a strange diet. I believe it's mostly composed of wood. What happens is they keep eating like this strange diet, and it begins to like turn their bodies into wood. And they eventually die, but when they die, they're kind of like a wood mummy. And it's so weird. Maybe I'll find it for you. Hang on. I'll just look it up. Japanese wood mummy. Oh, what is it called?
So they just
Buddhist monks.
they turn themselves essentially into wannabe dryads. That is
Yeah,
amazing.
there you go. That's the link for that one if you want to read about that. Fascinating stuff.
That's, oh my god.
Yeah, I can't even begin to imagine how painful that must be because their bodies are being mummified while they're alive.
Yeah. And I want I've got to wonder what leads people to that sort of conclusion. Like,
I think
ah,
they're all trying to find nirvana or whatever, right? Like there's the dude who
e-
was a Buddhist and he starved himself to death in a cave.
yeah. Like you can I I've always wondered like what's going through the person's mind when they're like obviously this is how you reach divinity. Because
Yeah,
it's always some wacky shit.
you said it. Yeah,
It's
that's
never like, well, okay, it's very rarely gonna get your attention if it's something like, oh, the way you achieve divinity is just to make a lot of friends or whatever. But no, what's gonna get your attention is like, no, I'm gonna eat honey for the rest of my life and then have myself dipped in honey. I know that one's
yeah,
not quite to reach divinity, but Jesus. Like,
yeah,
although, okay, so the man as medicine thing I can see as like, man, this is fucked, but I can see that being done to like prisoners. If you've
yeah.
got if you've got particularly fucked up individuals who this guy's murdered someone and the village needs medicine, so we're just gonna gorge this man on honey and then dip him in honey and then eat him.
Yeah.
Yikes. But like for a person to go through and be like, I'm going to do this. That's
Yeah, it's weird. People are strange. Do all kinds of weird stuff.
yeah, that is absolutely wacky, and I just, oh my god, that is amazing.
Yeah, so these podcasts are honestly very educational sometimes.
Yeah. Oh man, that that is that. I can't even think of anything in fantasy that like tops how weird that is.
Oh yeah, look, when it comes to everything, real life is always stranger than any kind of fiction we can come up with.
Yeah, like
Like,
I don't know, man. Lovecraft couldn't have come up with something that wacky.
yeah, like you just, if you want to find wacky stuff, just look into the insect world and like learn about all the insane parasite stuff that goes on. Holy crap, it's just so crazy. The xenomorph from the alien stuff was like inspired by real life wasps because I hope I'm not talking crap here, but I'm pretty sure I'm correct. But like The wasps will inject larvae into paralyzed spiders and caterpillars.
Yes,
And
yes, that's a
yeah,
thing that happens in real life.
yeah,
Jesus, it's like some sort of desert wasp.
yeah. So there's all kinds of like really weird things in nature. Like you've got that fish parasite that like it's like a kind of looks like a kind of a sea cockroach, and it will like chew off the tongue of a fish, and then it becomes the fish's tongue, and then like every time the fish eats something, um, that little parasite gets like the first serve because it's the fish's tongue. So weird.
Yeah, yeah, I remember hearing about that one. A little bit
Yeah.
gross. A little bit gross. Really, really weird.
And there's
And,
like hundreds of things like that that are just as weird. So,
oh, okay. So you cover demons and stuff on your, like demon summoners and so on your channel. There's like a kind of specific sort of thing that I've been looking for in games. Maybe you might have come across something like it, but you know how like in in books and movies there'll always be your um sort of Faustian character who like signs a deal with a powerful demon and gets unique powers. I've always wondered why you wouldn't have something like that in a game, but you get to choose the sorts of demons, like where during gameplay you get to make those sorts of pacts with a demon. Have you found anything like that?
it would be super awesome. Let me think. So, I don't think there's anything like exactly like that, unfortunately, but something does come to mind that maybe scratches a similar itch. So, you know Dark Messiah of Might and Magic?
I've had that one suggested to me a couple of times.
Yeah, it's a great game. It's not a great game if you're looking for minion stuff, but if you don't mind me spoiling a small amount of the story.
Absolutely.
So basically, you play as a guy called Zareth, and he's the son of a demon lord. And because of that, his demon lord dad has like put some kind of succubus into his head. And this succubus is called Zana, and she's like always like a voice in like your head, and she's like giving you advice and stuff. And you can choose to get rid of her, or you can choose to keep her. And basically, like, you know, I always keep her because she's cool, but um, it's kind of like that because keeping her and like doing what she wants to do is kind of like damning yourself more and more. And maybe that is something like what you're looking for.
Maybe.
But
Because that sounds pretty cool. That sounds fairly similar to what I'm talking about.
yeah, it's not exactly what you want, but it's maybe it will help. I really love that game. It's great.
You know, I actually I got excited for Conan Exiles when it first was announced, sort of because of something similar, not quite
Yes.
the same. I heard there was going to be magic in it, and I was like, oh, maybe the magic in Conan Exile will be really cool. And somebody mentioned how there was this old Conan game where, like, as you developed magic, you would end up sacrificing some of your health. Your character would become withered, and like, if you got up high enough in magic, you could like summon a god. And I'm like, that sounds really cool. That sounds, first off, like Conan. The Conan wizards and stuff in Conan were really much cooler than any example in video games for magic. Like,
Yeah.
I'm
I
actually pretty sure you've done a video talking about almost exactly what I'm talking about too. The sort of demon summoners and so on from Conan.
yeah, I'm a big Conan fan. Like I've read the books. Like I've got the Conan Chronicles of all the stories, and I've read it like maybe 5 or 6 times, like cover to cover. I've only read the stuff from Robert E. Howard. I haven't read anything from the authors after that. But yeah, what was meant to happen in Conan Exiles was there's meant to be a corruption mechanic. So basically, when you go into the dark places in the world, like the deep, dark temples and stuff that are sort of imbued with all this negative magic, what happens is it seeps into you, and you can get like corrupted. And what happens when you're corrupted is your health is halved. Like at maximum corruption, you get half as much health, half as much stamina, and it might do other things to you, like it might reduce your strength and stuff like that. I haven't played in a while, so I don't know. But what was meant to happen is that they're meant to have this corruption mechanic tied in with the sorcery and the necromancy. And what we were meant to be able to get was both demon summoning and necromancy as like a really awesome thing that they described. Unfortunately, what they promised and what they delivered are not at all the same thing, and they're nowhere near as cool. So first of all, demon summoning is completely absent, which is a big shame because Conan has some awesome demon summoning stuff in its lore. There's like several stories I can think of. There's A Witch Shall Be Born, which involves an evil witch that summons like this gigantic frog demon thing, which is like totally awesome. And I'm pretty sure that story inspired Conan the Destroyer, the movie. There's several other things I can't quite remember that revolve around demons.
There were like a group of eunuchs or something that like summoned demons into their own body or something. I've never read Conan, but it's one of those things when you're looking into magic and fiction, Conan comes up because Conan has very cool magic in it.
It does. You know, it's that low fantasy setting because what we are typically used to in the modern days with what the kind of fantasy we get is like high magic, where magic is really flashy and everything. Like you've got people slinging fireballs and like big effects and stuff. Whereas the magic in Conan tends to be much more subtle. You've got like dark rituals and like sacrifices and things like that. And I find that kind of magic really awesome because I just find like the standard arcane mage, generally speaking, it's a bit too flashy for me.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah. And I think that's why I'm also drawn to necromancers and stuff, because it's got the ritual side of it, which is really cool. I can tell you a really cool ritual that happens in Conan. One of the stories, I forget the name of the story itself, but it involves these black wizards, and they're performing this ritual on a king, and they're killing him basically from like far away. And they're only able to do this because they sent a spy or something into his place, and they were able to find a bunch of ingredients. Like I think they had a lock of his hair and stuff like that. Maybe his like fingernail clippings, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And because they had these things, they had like a connection to him and they could kill him. And that's like just so freaking cool, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I would love to see stuff like that in... you're almost never going to see stuff like that in video games, although I've seen it in one video game that was made by like two people sitting in their basement. Have you ever heard of an old game engine called Beyond or Build Your Own Net Dream?
No, tell me about it.
Beyond was this... It's hard to call it a game engine. It is bad. It still exists. But it was this website you would go and you download the client and people could make whatever game on it. It's free to use. It's relatively simple and easy to set up. I used to make sprites on it because making sprites was fun. I tried to make a game, and making game is hard. So I didn't make a game in it, but there was a Death Note game where you would be spawned into the world. You would have a random name and a random appearance and a profession. And just once every so often, after the previous death note was destroyed or lost or the server reset, a death note would drop into the world, and whoever had the death note could just write your name in it and kill you. But the thing is, the name that appeared in the chat was not your character's name. So it was like you had to find out the person's real name, and you could do that through a series of like investigating where they work. You might see them on television, because there were points where like for some of the survival aspects actually going on television, there was a television studio in the game. And mind you, this engine was essentially like a bunch of 32 16-bit sprite-based character world. So it wasn't like your full 3D rendered whatever, but you'd stand in front of a camera, and anybody in front of a television would be able to look at the television, and you'd be chatting to all of them. And your real name is more likely to come up in that sort of a setting, because you're like talking to a reporter or something. And it involved a lot of espionage and sort of social engagement, which I want to see more of in games. I would love to see games with like small servers, but like everything you interact with keeps some information that you interacted with it.
Yeah, I agree. Conan Exiles had so much potential for this kind of cool thing, because it comes from the Conan lore, which is just brimming with this kind of magic. And it has the multiplayer aspect to it, so they could have done stuff like what I had in my mind that I was really looking forward to back when the game was like first released, when they sort of promised the demon summoning and demonology and all that, is I like imagined, there'd be a group of players that are like really frail because they're filled with corruption, and they're doing like a ritual together. And like whatever ritual they're doing, it can be easily sabotaged. So they need like actual players and like demon summons and undead or whatever to kind of like protect them. And if they manage to summon, like if they manage to finish this ritual, then like something really big happens. Like, the avatar of the god comes down and they can use it to like smash someone's base to a pulp. And that would be so cool for like the multiplayer aspect, because there would be a whole story going on there. It would be like a Conan story. There'd be like these evil mages, right? And they're doing something really bad that's going to destroy a kingdom. So you've already got this story, and then you as the player, as like an enemy player, you might be the assassin. So you have to scale the walls to get into the enemy base, because you can do that in Conan Exiles. You can climb the walls and stuff. It's really awesome.
Yeah.
So you somehow infiltrate the enemy base and assassinate these mages and interrupt their like evil ritual that is not at all like a sort of standard flashy fireball thing. It's like a meticulous ritual that they had to prepare for. They had to gather this and that ingredient. And, it would be really awesome in my opinion, but it's a bit too much to ask for, I guess, in a game.
It can be. And the thing is that the reason magic is as flashy as it is because it's sort of what people have come to expect. Now, personally, I would love to see something like you can do a direct damage spell if you have a item which was held by a person within X amount of time, like stuff that like would evoke more of the honestly, I don't even know what to call it, more of a book-like feel.
Yeah.
Frankly, because that's how I think of it. Like books and actually even TV shows and movies are pretty bad about it.
Yeah, I think unfortunately video games is the wrong format for this kind of thing, at least at the moment. You really have to go to books for this kind of thing. But maybe in the future there'll be some kind of way that we can get this kind of elaborate sort of Conan-style rituals. That would be really cool.
You've got to get game developers who are fans of Conan, things like that, but also fans of games like Among Us or one of those sniper kind of games. Games where like there's a lot of attention to small details.
Yeah.
Recently picked up a game called Sacrifice, which hold on, no, brain went on a tangent. Stepping away, because that tangent actually had nothing to do with what we were talking about. But like imagine if you're playing something like Ark or Conan, and you knew that there's a ritual in the game where somebody can, I don't know, directly attack you or cause a disease, because diseases are much better than killing a person in online games. You know, long-term debuff instead of outright killing them. That's much more devastating. And the way they can use this disease is if they find anything that you held within the past, let's say, 24 hours. And so, you know, you're going out, you're gathering materials, but now you know anything that's in my base that can be picked up by another person is a threat to me. Do you think that would make the game less enjoyable?
I think it's all about the implementation. Maybe just every generic object would be too much, but maybe something more special. Like, I don't know how you'd make it special.
I guess you could say like weapons, armor,
Yeah.
or maybe specific high-level items of some form. Because yeah, I do see like, because what you could do is like, maybe if you've gotten hit with a weapon, that weapon now is sort of tagged with a cookie or something that says, hey, this hit that person and now has your blood on it, and you can use that blood to go and do a ritual, but that makes any combat encounter a bit more threatening. I love the idea of using ID tagging and cookies and so on in Magic in games, because like,
Yeah.
it's how you get those sorts of the scrying and the distant magic, whatever.
You know how in Ark and Conan Exiles, when you log out, you kind of go into that sleeping state, you're just like lying there?
Yeah.
It would be totally possible for someone to like sneak up on you with like a vial and a sacrificial dagger. Just like cut you, collect some blood or whatever, sneak away, do a ritual with it.
You know, I think there's even an item actually in Ark where you can draw blood from another person. Maybe you can only do it from yourself, but it would be really cool to have it where, like, to have like a magic mod in Ark that used that blood for something other than healing yourself, because that's what you do with blood in Ark.
Yeah. Imagine this story arc. So, because I know you love stories in games. But
Yeah.
imagine in Conan Exiles, right? So you're the powerful like faction leader of this guild or whatever. You've got your nice castle or whatever. The enemy faction wants to destroy you, and they want to use dark magic to do it. So they have someone new, like a new player to the server, infiltrate your castle by, you know, joining your guild or whatever, and like rising for the ranks, and they're just slowly getting closer and closer to you, sort of thing. And then one day, they're close enough to you that they can collect that blood sample without you knowing about it. And then they sneak away and give that to the enemies. And like, imagine if that was possible in the game. The kind of like insane paranoid mind games you'd have to be, the 4D chess you'd have to be doing to like always wonder like, is this person a spy?
Have
Are
you
they on my side?
have you ever played Eve Online? Because you're describing something like what happens to Eve Online.
I haven't played it, but I know how crazy that game is.
Yeah.
It's a
It, I was sitting there as part of a corporation at one point, listening to them plan out a war, and this one guy is just like, "Oh, there's no way you can beat these people, whatever, whatever," and he's talking about how, listen, I know you can't beat this faction. I used to be part of them, and the leader of the corporation goes, "Wait, you used to be part of them?" And he's like, "Yeah," and he's like, do you still have any friends in that faction? A couple, why? Shoot them a message, I want to talk to them. And then the next day I'm logging in, they're like, okay, we're all moving to this one sector, and the faction war is going to get really, really rough. We need to move a whole caravan worth of stuff over. You're gonna not have access to a lot of your ships. And then over the next week or something, I'm hearing all the, like, we're getting blockaded in by these guys. And then it's like a solid week later, I'm playing just a mining ship because I enjoy the social aspect of online games more than I enjoy actually playing them. But the blockade has been there for a while, keeping us in. We're not getting any trades out, but finally the big confrontation is going to happen. Mind you, Eve is all people. There are no NPCs in this, so all of the ships sort of warp into this place, which is sort of like a center point for how we can get in and out. And they go to attack our fleet or whatever. And this mercenary guild that the one guy used to be part of sort of apparently just moves a little bit slower than everybody else, and then cuts out of the alliance that they were in with these other people and just starts blasting their ships. And that's how we ended up winning. Because over the course of that week, they were just going back and forth on making a deal on how this mercenary group was going to betray the people paying them, and how much our faction had to pay them to do so. These are the kinds of stories I love to see happen.
Eve is like just such an incredible game. I've never played it, and I never will play it because I just can't devote that kind of time to something. But holy crap, Eve is just awesome. There's nothing else like it that I quite know of, but it fascinates me, like just how it can exist the way it is, and like how it's grown into what it is, and it's just incredibly awesome. I love to hear about like the crazy wars and like all the intrigue and stuff that players do in that game. It's almost like a lifestyle, isn't it?
Yeah, and
Like,
actually, I think it's literally impossible now to recreate Eve. Like, since Eve now exists, I don't think anyone else can make an Eve-like game. They've tried, right? You've had a lot of games that have tried for that kind of thing, but they end up failing because there's like a specific kind of person that plays Eve, and I'm talking about a specific kind of person that plays Eve in the specific kind of way that people think of when you think of Eve players. Because there are all sorts of people who probably play Eve because, oh, I'm in a spaceship and I can blow up a spaceship. But those aren't the kinds of people you think of when you're talking about Eve players. You're thinking like the guy who spent a year getting into a faction, growing through the ranks, so he could potentially have a chance at borrowing one of the most expensive ships in the game, and then left the faction with it.
yeah, Eve is like trying to think. I had a train of thought. What was I going to say? Oh shit. Yeah, Eve. I got it. Eve is like if you know you've got like an awesome book or whatever. It's like you're living that. Like you're literally living the plot of an insane sci-fi book.
Yeah, and it's very hard because there's nothing you can do game design wise to ever achieve Eve. Eve is sort of a what happened to Eve is a player mindset. And it's a player mindset that actually happened more in older MMOs, I feel like. Possibly because of the younger audiences when they first came out. Like, you have a lot more free time. And I think I'm gonna blame the popularity of video games and YouTube and so on for these quicker sorts of gratification, because like, did you ever play EverQuest?
No.
EverQuest was a very slow progressing game, and it was very harsh. It was a full loot MMO. You die, you lose all of your stuff until you can travel the however many hundreds of yards on foot to get back to your corpse. Hope you can find it.
Yeah. The closest I got to that was RuneScape back in 2004. I used to play some of that, and I don't know how familiar you are with RuneScape. You probably know it pretty well, but there's a whole PKing system where you drop everything. You like hit someone, you get a skull over your head, you drop everything you're carrying.
Yep.
And I loved that because you could play and survive as like a bandit. Screw fishing, screw questing, whatever. I'm just gonna like rob people basically, and I loved it. It's so cool, and you can't do that at all in a modern MMO. And there was another game. What was it? Ultima. You could like steal stuff from people too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
There is a newer MMO coming out that's trying to sort of recapture that. I think it's gonna die off really fast, unfortunately,
Probably.
because it's going for that older style. It Mortal Online 2. It's like in its beta phase right now, but it's sort of a direct update to Mortal Online 1.
Yeah.
With better graphics and whatever, but I don't know, man. I loved those old Ultima, EverQuest. Star Wars Galaxies is literally my favorite MMO ever, and ever since it went offline, it just sort of it's a bit of a meme in it's a bit of a joke in MMO communities that like the Star Wars Galaxies players are just sort of adrift looking for another MMO to replace it, knowing that you'll never find it.
Yeah. It's kind of a lost time in a way. I don't know how accurate this is to say, but I kind of feel like it's kind of a strange thing to say, really, but back in like 2004, 2005, I played Classic WoW, right? I played it for a couple of years. And it was kind of like there's some kind of weird sort of magic to that time period. And I don't think you can recreate it. Like, I don't know how successful they've been with Classic WoW. Maybe it's been really successful. But for me, like, playing Classic WoW in 2021 would just feel wrong to me. It was really just a thing of that particular time period, and now it's done and dusted. Like, there were many factors as to how I could play that game as much as I did and enjoy it as much as I did. And I think it was my age, like being a teenager, and also just like the decade that it took place in, as well as like other things. I don't know if I'm making any sense.
No, absolutely, you absolutely are. This is actually a thing that every channel that covers MMOs talks about. Like, people like to say that older MMOs were just better, but there's a lot of confounding factors that happen in between saying that and it being true. Like, yes, to me, older MMOs were better. I don't like these Korean grinder style games. I don't like flashy graphics. Actually, really bother my eyes. Like, if you've ever seen gameplay of Black Desert Online, that game is gorgeous, I'm sure, but it looks awful. World of Warcraft feels off. I don't know. I don't like the the game feel of it, but something like a lot of the pre-WoW games, and part of what's talked about is that at the time you were a lot younger, so even if the game was bad, it was probably the best you had. But the fact that that game existed actually influences now how you think of games, because you really enjoyed that game at the time. And so, like, was it better, or were you was that game's existence so influential on you that you now retroactively think it was better, or something along those lines? If you get that sort of critique, I guess it would be, of it.
Yeah. Another game that this kind of happened to me too was Starcraft 2, and that might not make much sense until I explain it. But when Starcraft 2 came out, I think it was 2010, there was like a big popularity push with it. Like, everyone was playing it, or at least, everyone I knew. And I was playing it too. I was loving the shit out of it. Like, I played it so much that I got Diamond 1 vs 1, and me and my friend Dave, we got to Master 2 vs 2 one time. It was just like a fluke in a way, because we had like a really good strategy, and we're just like steamrolling people with it, and we got Master. And like, we're probably more like Platinum players. Well, Dave's a bit better than me. He was probably more like a Diamond. But in any case, yeah, right at that time there were like all these like names playing it. Like, I don't know if you know the guy on YouTube called Destiny. He does political stuff now. Yeah, but I know him as a StarCraft 2 Zerg player from, like, I don't know, 2011 or whenever it was. And back then you had like In Control, you had I'm trying to think of all the names, but you had the guy with I in his name. What was it called? Idrigit? Yeah. A kind of like bad-mannered Zerg player that was in Korea a lot, and he was like kind of known for his bad manners. It's pretty awesome. You had all these players that like were playing back then, and they kind of made this kind of like timeless environment for me, where StarCraft 2, for me, is this like brief window of time, and it's back then. And whenever I play the game now, I haven't played it for a long time, like maybe 2 or 3 years now, but it's like, whenever I play the game now, it feels wrong, because all these people have moved on. Like, all these people I mentioned, they're not playing StarCraft 2 anymore. StarCraft 2 itself has moved on. Like, the strategies are different that people use. Like, the whole metagame has changed. Like, all the strategies that I once would have used are now completely out of date, and they're kind of like old and whatever. And even the kind of players that play it have changed, because it's kind of matured as a game. Because back then, because everyone was playing it, you could be Diamond, and you could be, like, with that skills that you had back then, if you were to take those skills and do them now, you might only be Gold League, because the people playing, like the player pool has gone down in volume, and the quality of the players that have stayed has gone up. And this is exactly what I experienced when I played StarCraft like just a few years back. my skills that got me to diamond only got me to like gold or platinum when I played the new game, because everyone was just so much higher quality now. And I don't think I could have ever gotten master with Dave with like our kind of strategy, because like we had like a good strategy. They kind of relied on people like having not figured out the game completely yet. Like things were still new. People were still learning how the game worked. And yeah, for me, it's just like multiplayer games like Starcraft 2 and like MMORPGs. They exist within like a time in the past for me. And whenever I try to revisit them, it feels wrong because I'm no longer in that period of my life. It's kind of like, yeah, it's a weird thing to explain, but this is why I can't go back to games like that. And nowadays I don't play MMORPGs at all because I don't really have the time or the patience for them, and they typically don't have like the minions that I'm looking for. Like you get these sort of bad minion mechanics, and that puts me off too. So
yeah, like I every so often will find myself trying to get back into MMOs, and they're always like okay. I actually watch a lot of MMO sort of content on YouTube, and I mean, they never seem that like they seem cheerful, but not actually optimistic, if you know what I mean.
yeah,
Like it's always like to move to more desirable design. Yeah, I definitely agree there, Apnea is like, I think a lot of MMOs have failed to move to a more desirable design. Yeah, honestly, like the thing is that I think that without some sort of like staying mechanic, if an MMO doesn't like, that's gonna sound weird. I'm gonna say it anyway. If an MMO isn't punishing enough, you're not really going to stick around, because like it you don't feel growth at that point, right? You just sort of
yeah,
are doing things. Eyebrows
that's
are
right.
messing with me.
Yeah, and yeah, it's kind of weird. The MMO player has changed a lot too, right? Like
Yeah.
the person that was kind of like me back when I was like an early teenager was like really happy to like lose all their items on death. Like I I really liked that. I loved it actually. I also loved that in Runescape, because that's the game I played the most back then. I loved that all the items in the game were player made. So there wasn't any like going
Yes.
into a big dungeon and getting like some super duper item. No, like the rune scimitar or whatever was forged by a player,
Yeah, I definitely
and
agree.
that made like kind of an awesome marketplace. You couldn't trade items in World of Warcraft; like they were kind of bound to you and stuff, and the stuff you could craft was nowhere near as good as the stuff you could get from a dungeon, and that always like bothered me too. But I don't think modern MMO players want that old kind of game where it's like a completely player-driven economy, and you lose all your stuff when you die, and just that kind of thing. Like, I don't think they want it.
So that's a discussion that happens in MMO spheres. Is like, do players want that old style of game? And I think the most interesting point that people reach is saying that people don't know if they want it,
Mm.
because it's been so long since a game has really come out and had that kind of sensibility. Meanwhile, you do still have Minecraft, Ark, and Conan Exiles, which to a degree have that, to varying degrees, have that. They have the full loot thing. They have the varying degrees of difficulty and hardcore to them. I find Ark fairly hard, but Anyone in any of the art groups that I'm on Facebook will laugh at me for saying that.
Yeah.
Apparently, you're not supposed to try to fight the dinosaurs with a sword. You're supposed to try to fight the dinosaurs with a bigger dinosaur.
Yeah, or get a gun. That works pretty well too.
Yeah. But because there aren't many games out there that get a big enough profile that are like EverQuest, are like old school RuneScape. I think actually old school RuneScape has gotten a lot of positive attention in the past couple of years. In the past year, I should say. I know, like, personally, I still remember playing old school, like, playing the original RuneScape and, like, camping out at the highest end of the wild, where there was, like, that one level 86 demon or something like that, because there would always be somebody in rune armor trying to fight it, and then I could drag a second demon to them, and then they would die, and I could get free stuff. Because I could be a dick. There are a couple of games out there that try to do it, although, man, the best example I've got is Albion Online, which is terrible. I hate playing Albion Online, because it's like old RuneScape. If it was a mobile game, I don't know how to really describe it.
That sounds pretty bad.
And I'm not talking about, like, in the mechanics or anything. Because one of the things that's really hard to pin down is, like, what do you mean by game feel, right? But you know how... have you ever played something like Summoner's War on your phone?
No, I haven't.
So, in Summoner's War... you'll get items, and then you spend the in-game currency, whatever it's called, your gold equivalent, to like level up an item, and there's a percentage chance it'll fail, and it always plays a flashy graphic and a noise when you do so. And when other games have that, it messes up the game feel for me, even when like fairly decent games have it. I don't know if like what I'm describing there makes sense, or if you can synthesize that into something usable.
Yeah, I kind of get what you're going at. Yeah.
Like, it's I don't know. It's really, it's to me fairly frustrating to try to try to play any new MMO, or to even try to think of like, do people want those old MMOs? Because I think if given the chance, if people sat down and played something like EverQuest with the newest graphics engine, they would enjoy it. But if it doesn't exist, how are you gonna know?
Yeah.
Which is part of why I like dragging other nerds onto here, because I figure if you bring enough nerds into one location, maybe you create something.
Yeah. I think like even if I wanted to play an old school MMO, like I was really in the mood for it and everything, which I'm currently not, simply because well, I could be in the mood for it if the right one came along, I suppose. Except for this one fact I'm coming up to, is just like the time thing. I don't know how, like, as a person that's not a kid, you're meant to be able to put in enough time to sort of make it work, because MMOs demand a lot of time from you.
Yeah, they do. They will eat up your entire life, and then you stop uploading to YouTube, you stop streaming, because you're just no, I'm not working on any of the The games, Necromancy. I'm playing
Yeah.
MMO. I'm playing Eve.
Yeah, it was great when I was a kid and like I just come home from school and like I didn't care about anything. I was like, right, I'm gonna stay up all night playing World of Warcraft, and I just stayed up all night playing World of Warcraft. And I went to school and like slept throughout the whole school day because I was that kind of student. And then I do it again, and I can't do that anymore.
Yeah, I remember playing City of Heroes with my mom, and like, now that I'm anything approaching an adult, I'm like, how?
Yeah, it's impossible. If they made a game that was like an MMO and it had like pretty sick mini mechanics. Oh wait, you know what? I know how you get me back into MMOs.
Oh,
It's a crazy idea I've had bouncing around in my head for ages. If anyone wants to like take this idea and make it into a game, please like do it because I'll probably never be able to do it, and it should exist in my opinion. But basically, like
here you
imagine
go,
an
Apnea.
MMO, but it's got two sort of layers to it. So you've got like a standard player that is like just doing the single person MMO thing. Then you have another kind of player, and they're kind of like the NPC master, and they like control like maybe a dungeon, or they control like a city or something, and they can just control the NPCs in that city. And it's kind of like like when you're playing Warcraft 3, how you've got like all the units and stuff, and you've got the hero units. Well, imagine if those hero units were players, but you were still controlling the other stuff. You know what I mean? So like those players.
Hey, so
Independent.
I've got somebody in chat who's like, "Hey Cheb, would it scare you to know that I have a game design doc for something similar to that?"
Oh,
Because
that's awesome.
in my Discord server is a mod developer who is working on shifting to full game design. I believe you said you haven't made a full game of your own yet, but you are working on it there, Apnea. But yeah, Darth Apnea makes mods and is working on making video games and has worked in IT for a while from what I understand. So yeah.
That's wonderful. Yeah, maybe a game like that could bring people in. Because I think with MMOs, another issue they have is that like World of Warcraft came out and it was like a giant success. And then the only kind of MMO anyone wanted to make after that point was like heavily WoW influenced. And I think we also need something that's like completely new. I might be totally wrong about this, but my feeling is like another WoW clone just won't cut it. We
No,
need a new
absolutely.
formula. Yeah.
More theme park MMOs are not going to cut it. If you want to emulate a game, and I'm gonna go back to the only MMO I truly fell in love with, which is Star Wars Galaxies. Like that would be the game to try to emulate. It had one of the classes was the bureaucrat, and they were kind of the thing you were talking about. They didn't really control NPCs, but all of their class abilities were things like you can set up more quests because all of the quests were player generated. So you could set up more quests. You paid less taxes because taxes were a thing. Every time you went up to one of the terminals to try to put in a quest, you would get taxed. Every time you'd try to take a quest, you'd get a minor tax. Stuff like that. And so you can... there was this class that was entirely dedicated to I'm creating content for other players. And that shit's awesome.
I agree 100%. Yeah.
When Fallout 76 first came out, I'm a huge fan of Fallout. I love that world. I love the whole like dystopian world, and so the fact that I could play this with other people, I was like, I'm definitely getting into this, and I'm gonna set up a bar for raiders, and I'm gonna have them go out and kill people and bring stuff back to me because that'll be awesome. And then I found out that, like, okay, sleeping still gives you the experience bonus. You can get stat boosts through food. This is what I'm going to focus on. I'm going to make food. I'm going to make guns. I'm going to make explosives and drugs. This is going to be my character. And then I set up the bar, and it was boring as fuck. There was one point where I got a good story out of it. And it's because a world quest had popped up where, like, there were a bunch of ghouls running around, and there was like a area where you had to kill off a bunch of ghouls. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to immerse myself in this world. There was just a guy who stopped into the bar, and I was like, hey, we have this ghoul problem going on that's driving away my customers. How about you and I go, and I'm like, we're going to go to this one hospital to try to figure out what's happening. And see if we can't find a cure or stop it or whatever. And I was the NPC. I traveled with him, and I did the NPC thing. If you read any of the articles around Fallout 76 at the time it released, I wasn't the only person doing this, apparently. But, you know, we went through, we did the world quest, and it happened to drop like a legendary weapon, and I'm like, oh, here you go, this is your quest reward. Because apparently he didn't get the legendary drop from it, so I was like, it was completing the NPC cycle as well. It was really cool. But it's the sort of thing, it does also rely on a sort of person, a sort of player. And as somebody who games a lot on Twitch, it's hard for me to imagine that the sort of mindset you're looking for really exists, because let me tell you, man, when given the opportunity to, other players and Twitch viewers seem to prefer just making it worse.
Yeah.
And that's it's not 100% true, but like, man, I remember playing RimWorld with viewers, and it was insanely frustrating. Oh my god, actually Apnea in chat just brought up Space Station 13. Have you ever... No, because you haven't heard of Beyond.
No, don't know it.
So Space Station 13 had you in a group of like 50 people, or like 20 to 50 people on a space station just living your life. And there were all sorts of jobs, which could include anything from like security guard to janitor to chef to clown to elder god cultist, serial killer, false prophet, like, and everything in it was insanely detailed. Like, you know, being the janitor, it was easy enough. You just mop the hallways, set up wet floor signs so that people don't slip and kill themselves. Being a clown was weird, but like, mining was a thing you did in the game so that the people in the research lab could do the researching. So that the people in the weapons lab could develop weapons, and so you relied on the mining guy to do the mining correctly, which was like a 13-step process or something that inevitably ended in giving up as the last step. Like, yeah, having these games with, like, I feel like what makes these games is having a lot of systems that have some depth to them.
Yeah.
And also
sure.
having them intersect.
I was just thinking more like while you're talking about the MMO thing I described, and I kind of realized that Starcraft kind of has it in a way. I don't know if you're aware. I don't know how much Starcraft you've played, but there's a mode where you can like share control with another player. And like when I used to play back like so many years ago with my friend Dave. We tried this sometimes. That was basically like one of us would do all the micromanagement of units, and that would be like controlling the heroes for that in the previous analogy, but there's no heroes in StarCraft. But basically, one of us would manage the army because, it's such a fast game and like micro is a huge part of it. So if you've got one person dedicated completely to controlling like all of the micro, then the other person can do all the macro, which is like the building of units and all that stuff. And it never really worked out too well for us. I think it's just because there weren't enough of us. If definitely one person can do all the macro if they're fast. But I think for proper micro, it would be great if like someone was controlling like a small group of units, like maybe one person just had control over this one medevac, and they were just harassing the hell out of the enemy with it, like dropping marines behind the lines, picking them up quickly, taking them somewhere else, attacking the other side of the base. Then you have like another person who's like controlling one quarter of the army, then another person controlling this different quarter. Like just really split it up so like 5 people controlling the same faction. But then you scale that way up to like the MMO point of view where every single little unit is controlled by a player, but you've still got some other players behind everything that are manufacturing all these things for these other players to use. I think that'd be so awesome to play. I'd love to play that.
Yeah, something like where all of the players are some variation on a summoner type class, and
Yeah.
create like semi-permanent pawns or something. That sounds interesting. I don't like. It sounds like the sort of thing that'd be fairly hard to. I'm not gonna say balance because I frankly hate the idea of balance in MMOs. I think that unbalanced gameplay is actually a good thing.
Oh my god, we're so on the same page with that. I think that the pursuit of balance ruins all the fun a lot of the time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like trying to, how do you ever balance something like we're just gonna go to the Holy Trinity. How do you ever actually balance them against one another?
Yeah, like here's a good example. So how is a guy with a sword ever going to be able to compete with a mage that's like a living flamethrower? Like they can literally just shoot flames straight into someone's face. They can like launch a fireball, like just blow shit up. Like a sword is never going to be able to compare to that. So what they do to make it work is they like either make the warrior like really insanely strong, like some kind of superhero almost, or they like weaken the hell out of the mage, and then the mage seems silly. It's like in my opinion, it would be better if there were like far more warrior characters for like every one mage or something like that. So it would be balanced, but in a different way than just like nerfing the hell out of the thing that's overpowered, because that ruins necromancy too. Like a necromancer is a dude who's got control over like a squad of minions, and like of course he's going to be stronger than just one dude with a sword, but to make it balanced they make the necromancer suck. So like I just wish they would just somehow find a way to balance in a different way than nerfing stuff.
I think the best way to balance like magic casters to do something like Conan Exile was supposed to do with its corruption mechanic, where like you mentioned Outward actually is another video game that does something similar, where like you opt to remove part of yourself. You choose to take on the corruption, and maybe with the corruption comes a mana bar, and you only have as much mana as you have corruption.
Yeah.
And you lose permanent health, you maybe lose permanent stamina, but you now have corruption to work with. You have this other economic thing, and you can use magic through it. And I think that would be a good way to go about it. I I don't like the arbitrary feeling stuff. I think it's a bit silly.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know how aware you are of like the scoring system I use on my videos for the mods and all that. I guess you know about it, right?
A little bit. I mean, I don't know if I've seen you break down the scoring system or anything.
Oh yeah.
Maybe you
Well,
did.
I could explain like a little bit about the origins of that because it's kind of relevant to what you were saying just then
Okay.
in a strange way. So right at the beginning, like when I started doing the YouTube thing, I was trying to think out like why do I like the games that I like? Like what are the things about this Minimancer thing that I like? And one of the categories that I noticed was that in the games that um, had things that I did like, they usually weakened the caster and like buffed the minions. And the games that I didn't like, they nerfed the minion and like kept the caster strong. So like just as an example, you know in Diablo 2, if you go full summoner mode, your main necromancer is pretty weak. Like he's just
Mm-hmm.
gonna do the minion dance, just like running around and your minions kill everything. And if you don't have your minions out, you're kind of screwed. And on the other end of the scale, you've got something like Neverwinter Nights 2, where you're like a powerful mage, and you can summon one crappy zombie. It's like just one singular zombie, and if you try to make another one, it'll despawn the previous one, and it will only hang around for like a minute. And they
Oh my
have to
god.
do it that way because you are so strong as a mage. Like they haven't weakened you at all, so like the minion has to be crap. And so that's why, like, for a long time, I had this like squishy caster um, score, where like I thought it was really important that a caster was like squishy as opposed to being strong. But then recently, I rethought my scoring system because I noticed in some cases, more so in modern games, the minions can be both good and the caster good too. Uh, a lot of modern ARPGs are like that. So I changed it. But that was like one of my thinking, and I think it kind of related to what you're talking about because I think to make it balanced with minions, you have to weaken the caster, at least in this situation. So like giving up part of yourself is like a great way to do it.
Yeah. One of the things I've wanted to see in games because I I don't see games do it very often. You were talking earlier about ritual casting and so on.
Yeah,
Something I would love to see is a game that completely eschews fireballs and any direct casting spell and instead only has casters that like apply sort of buffs and debuffs and control effects. Um,
yeah,
because like in books it's always like you're doing healing rituals or you're doing a ritual of good health or like you're singing a song of valor. Sorry, Jesus, I went off on a tangent again. I am so sorry.
okay.
Um, but no, so you were saying that more recently though your opinion on having to weaken the caster is changing.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to describe because I think it really depends on the game because like
Hmm.
when it comes to ARPGs, weakening the caster seems to be the correct approach. I'm trying to think of an example where, because there's a few games I played where I realized that this isn't really working, and that's why I changed it from like a score of 1 to 10 that influenced the entire score to just being like a yes or no option. Oh, I don't quite recall. It's pretty late for me too. It's like 4:36 a.m., so my
Oh
brain's
yeah,
shutting down. But
yeah.
I'm not sure. Maybe I could get back to you on that one when I'm clearer. But yeah, there's something that happened that made me realize that hey, this game has like got both a pretty powerful caster and the minions work well. and it's not got balance problems. And it happened to me like quite a few times. I thought, oh, I just have to change the scoring system. So now it's just how many minions you have, the quantity of them, whether they're permanent or not, how effective they are, and what was the last category? Maybe it was something like crafting. I don't quite recall. God, I don't even know my own scoring system anymore. Time to look it up. Oh, where is it now? It's going to open one of my files here. Yeah, it was craftable minions. So I've got like those four things.
Craftable minions are always amazing. That was one of those things in Eratus that I was like, okay, this is pretty neat at first.
Yeah. Oh, minion diversity, I forgot. So, yeah. So it's like, I think it's important to have some diversity. Like if all you can summon the skeletons, you've only got one kind of skeleton. Well, then that is not as good as if you have like many kinds of skeletons, like skeleton archers, skeleton mages, zombies. Like if you've got some diversity. So yeah, these are the things I look for when I'm scoring a game.
You know what? Honestly, the skeleton mage actually ends up being, in any game it's in, one of my favorites. Although I always end up like sort of thinking that even if no other minion weakens your character, the skeleton mage always feels like it should.
Yeah. You know, the skeleton mage in Diablo 2 was underpowered, I think.
Man, it's been so long since I've played.
Yeah. Maybe when Remastered comes out, you'll reacquaint yourself with it. But yeah, I always found that like whenever I invested points into like a pure skeleton mage build, it was never as strong as like pure warriors, which is sad. I think mages should be pretty strong.
Yeah. Either that or they should circumvent some sort of ammunition system that's used for range characters.
Yeah. They could also be like buffers and debuffers. That'd be pretty awesome. So you have like the warriors doing their thing, then you've got like the mages buffing and debuffing.
Yeah, I really like that. I actually, for a bit there, I got annoyed that like it seemed every MMO was just every game with multiplayer. When there was a mage, all they were doing was throwing fireballs.
Oh yeah, it's so tired, isn't it?
Yeah, and like, I have working in concept mode, or in the concept stage right now, a video on what I'm going to, what's probably going to end up being called the advanced art of casting a fireball, and talking about games like Dragon's Dogma, which is fairly popular for its quote awesome magic system, but it's not good. It's flashy is what it is.
Yeah.
Because it's all about the damage, it's all about the deeps, the damage per second, and there's nothing to me that interesting about damage per second. I think the coolest way to play Skyrim personally is playing an illusion character or a summoner.
Illusion is a lot of fun, like just turning the people against each other and all that.
Yeah, I saw you covered Ordinator. Did you ever play an illusionist using Ordinator?
No, I didn't. I stuck purely with the skeletons and stuff. I guess I should redo that with the illusion approach and see how that is.
It's a very fun and interesting character. I can't remember if it's Percus, Maximus, Ordinator, or one of the other perk reworks, where like at the highest level you can turn anyone into a follower.
Wow. That's neat.
It allows for all sorts of awesome feeling like story beats. That like there was a point where it was only because of this mod, this perk rework mod, that I felt like I could actually do a Thalmor playthrough,
Yeah.
because like, you know, you're playing this illusionist, and so you're like manipulating everybody on the battlefield or whatever. I don't know. I love that shit, and I like the idea of having spellcasters that are just, you can't deal damage. All you're doing is debuffing some people, buffing others, taking control of NPCs, something like that.
You just reminded me of a very unique magic class that I've never seen done in any other game. Um, you might not be aware of it. Maybe you are aware of it. There's the Dragon Age 2 game, which a lot of people hated. And I admit, it's pretty shitty looking back. I played through it once or twice, and just because I was so into the Dragon Age lore, because I love that. But one cool thing about Dragon Age 2 was it had a special kind of mage. And the spells that this mage had, it was just like crowd control. All he could do, it was all about like physics. So he could make like a black hole thing on the map that would suck everyone in, and he could like throw people around like ragdolls and stuff. But he couldn't actually damage them. But it was so cool to be playing this mage, because like in Dragon Age you have like a squad. You've got like 4 people. So
Yeah.
you'd have this mage, and like an enemy will get near the healer, yoink. You need these dudes to like all be funneled into like one area so you can like hit them all with a fireball. You use this guy to like squish everyone together, and then the fireball comes and hits them. It was just like a really unique magic system that I've never seen done anywhere else, but I really liked it.
Yeah, that sounds incredible. Like the ability to manipulate your opponent's position.
Yeah,
That's, I mean, that's not just like a little cool. That's like, that's an entire game.
yeah. Let me look it up. Dragon Age 2 Mage. Because it had these specializations, and it was one of the specializations you could go for. Oh, it was the Force Mage. Yeah, I'll just link
Ah,
it to you.
there was actually a character in City of Heroes that you could play like that. It was one of the characters that I had played. It was, I can't remember what the power set was called, but like you could drain your opponent's speed. You can increase everybody's ability to jump. You could cause people to bounce off of one another.
Yeah,
It was all really wacky stuff like that. And then you could combine that with the teleportation power, which allowed you to teleport yourself, your friends, or your enemies. And so you'd be, like jumping around, teleporting enemies off of buildings and stuff like that. It was not an effective combat style. It almost never helped anyone in anything, but it was wacky as hell and fun.
yeah.
Which, I mean, you know what? Honestly, more MMOs need to have the wacky fun class. Oh, man, that's a thing I could go off on for a while. Is like, you have so many games that focus on like, okay, this character deals the damage, this character takes the damage, this character heals the damage, and that's it. That's the end of the thought process. Brain empty. But you could, I mean, you're talking about that force mage thing. You're moving people around the battlefield. In any game, that's insanely useful, especially in like an action RPG where it's like your view is like locked to your mouse, and you have to point directly at the enemy to hit them with the stick.
Yeah,
I mean, imagine playing, I don't know, Call of Duty, and all of a sudden you're thrown back even just 2 feet.
yeah.
That would hugely change gameplay.
Am I wrong in thinking that the whole tank healer DPS thing came with WoW, or was it around before then?
I think the Holy Trinity, I think it got popularized by WoW, I want to say.
Yeah. So basically, when games are doing that, they're kind of like being WoW clones in a way.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, I can actually, I think that having the Holy Trinity in your game can be fine. It's whatever. You have your, let's say you have your fire mage, your paladin, and your cleric, all as characters, and they're the Holy Trinity. And then there's 5 other classes, and this one moves people around the board. This one, I don't know, strictly buffs and debuffs in ways that the priest doesn't. You have all of these characters with like hyper-focused abilities. Summoners, actually. You have like 2 or 3 different kinds of summoners in the game. Because
Yeah.
Necromancer is not the same as Demon Summoner, is not the same as Elemental Summoner, you know.
Yeah, and summoners are a funny one because they're kind of both DPS and tank. Because you can use the skeletons like a tank or as like a DPS unit too.
I was talking about Path of Exile at one point, and I'm like, it's fun in Path of Exile that as the witch focusing purely on necromancy, you can kind of pseudo-tank, not because you're good at tanking, but because you can just keep throwing bodies into the pool. You can take the Zap Brannigan approach to tanking.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, just a stray thought. I don't know if it's tangent, but it's MMO related. So, a big problem summoners have in MMOs when it comes to PvP is that people just snipe the summoner, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't even have to deal with the minions. They can just go straight to the summoner. I was wondering like how you could fix that. I kind of have one idea. It came from playing Age of Conan, which is kind of like a strange game. I think it's kind of underrated in some ways, but in other ways, okay, it's not so great. But in one way, it was awesome. Is that everyone could stealth, which is awesome because, like, when you think about it, yeah, everyone can actually hide if they want to. Like, not only rogues are able to do it. So what you could do is you could be a necromancer and you could hide and like you'd be stationary and you'd be invisible, but you still have your minions. So what I'd do is I'd like find somewhere that's like kind of like hidden from view, and then I'd like what I mean from hidden by view is like it's kind of obstructed, like there's trees that block the view from the road or whatever. Maybe it's a bit elevated, something like that.
Yeah.
And I'd go up there and I'd hide. I'd be invisible like a rogue in WoW. Then I'd see some schmuck coming up the road and I'd be like, minions, slay him. The minions would just like swarm out and just start killing this dude. And they wouldn't be doing much damage because, you know, they're kind of underpowered because MMO, necromancy, and ugh. But in any case, the dude had no idea like where I was. So he was like just fighting these minions and he couldn't snipe me. It was great. And I had a lot of fun doing this and it kind of fixed that problem for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was wondering if you could think up like a better way to achieve the same result.
I don't know if it's a better way, but you can put like a 30-second, 10-second timer after you die for like the minions stick around for X amount of time after you die. And it slightly de-incentivizes it. Or you have you have wacky minions. Minions who can like move you around, similar to the Force Mage from Dragon Age, or minions with a taunt ability that can relock your aggro or move your camera for you away from you. Oh my god, actually, man, okay, so we're gonna imagine a MMO where you have the action camera, right? So it's the Skyrim thing. You're where you're looking is locked to your mouse, right?
Yeah.
And let's say there is this undead creature. It's got like an orb or something, and the orb is all swirly and whooshy and stuff, and it doesn't do much. It just has a bubble around it. But whenever it's in your view keeps trying to look at it. Just your camera keeps shifting slowly towards this creature. I think that would be a really interesting way to sort of emulate a taunt-like ability. You know, it's not quickly like shoving your camera directly at it every time. It's just, you know, you're trying to swing at the necromancer, but your camera is just slowly moving over towards this undead wizard tank thing.
Yeah. Oh man, I just had a crazy idea, like just coming back to the Force Mage. Wouldn't it be so funny if like some paladin was trying to come at you to kill you because you know you wanted to snipe you, but you had like some skeletons that were Force Mages and they're just like yanking that dude around. It'd be so
That
funny.
would be so funny. Man, I once had an idea for like trying to create a battle royale style game that where you didn't deal any damage. It was more like Super Smash Bros or something. So like
Yeah.
every time you hit a person in it, it pushes them back, and it increments a number in the background so that the next time they get hit, it pushes them back even further. I think something like that would be super funny, and you talking about the Force Mage in that way made me think of it again.
Yeah.
Just imagine Bouncy Royale.
It'd be fun.
Oh, man. All right, so we're coming up on 3 hours. You said you were getting kind of tired. Did you want to wrap up?
Yeah, I think it's probably a good idea. Not because I want to. Like, I'd happily talk to you all night, but work in 4 hours.
Oh my god, dude, what? Did you not have you not slept? Wait,
No.
my dude.
Don't worry, it's okay. I work from home right now, so I guess I got a good 4 hours. I can just wake up and then immediately go to the laptop. I should be fine.
Oh my god, you oh my lord. No, you've got 8 hours of sleep, man. 8 hours.
Yeah, I try to get that. It's difficult. Ah, well.
Yeah, I can imagine. Where are you? I'm assuming you're at like you're in like New Zealand or Australia or something, saying it's 2 o'clock.
Oh yeah, my story is funny. So I'm Australian, but right now I live in Germany. I've been in Germany since 2013.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I came to Germany because my girlfriend was German, and we were together like for 8 years, and then we just recently kind of broke up. So now I'm like just on my own in Germany, kind of. And I'd like to leave at some point because like my reason for being here is kind of over. But then you know you've got the whole pandemic and everything, so kind of difficult. In any
Yeah.
case, right now I'm in Germany. It's a nice place, and yeah, in Germany it's just getting to 5 a.m. right now.
Ah,
So
okay. Yeah, you're so I've had two people in chat, well, mostly one person in chat, and it's pretty funny because they're actually one's from New Zealand, one's from Australia. So it's like I'm the only American caught between a bunch of goddamn upside down world people.
yeah. Man,
And sometimes that shit gets right the hell out of control.
yeah.
But we're gonna go ahead and wrap up here for tonight. Awesome chat, by the way,
Awesome
tonight,
chat.
Cheb. I have loved talking to you. I am really glad to have gotten to chat over voice with you.
Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, I've been such a fan for a while, and if anybody is interested, you guys should check out Cheb Gonaz on YouTube. You've got like a website or something that you run as well, right?
Yeah, I got a little website. It's horribly out of date right now. I try to keep it up to date, but what it should be is like basically a database of all necromancy and mini games. So like if you're looking for something for a game, you can like check it there, and it's got more information than my YouTube channel because of course I can just quickly dump something into the database and it will be there. So yeah, the only issue is I don't usually have much time to maintain it, so it's generally a little bit behind, but it does have different information than my YouTube channel.
All right. Yep, I threw a link to that in the Twitch chat. Again, not many people in chat, but oh, wait, chat's not on screen. I'm really bad at this. Oh well. If and when I make this into a YouTube video, I'll make sure to throw a link to your website in the video description, as well as a link to your YouTube, in case anybody watches it and is interested in checking you out.
Awesome. Thanks so much. It was great.
Yep.
Lots of fun.
Yep. Have a nice day.
You too. Bye.
Bye. Oh, that was awesome. I like this guy. Hold on. We're gonna screen cap real quick. Screen capture. Hello, kaleidoscope of vision. This guy has been... When was his first video? So...
Hey guys, welcome to part 1 of my Necromancer series. First off, we'll be looking at all the ARPG games, the best cover Necromancer.
This is from... Hold on. Yeah, February 13th, 2018 is when he started. And, I mean, he's got a pretty good library here. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6... 3, 4, 4, 5, 6, 7. I mean, yeah, just he covers all sorts of games. He's got he's got his world building talks that he does now. Honestly, you love to see it. It's awesome that there is someone out there with this kind of niche topic. He's got 1.5k subscribers, which is awesome. Oh man, I've got to watch this Soul Ash video eventually. But alright, I think that's gonna be enough for tonight. Yeah, that's probably gonna be it for me for tonight. In the meantime, though, just remember, nobody cares. Thank you all very much and good night.